all of your thoughts on last night's unimaginably horrible debate, an early opportunity for Joe Biden to convince voters of his strength and ability to lead in the face of threats to our democracy. Did he totally blow it? And could Donald Trump lie anymore in 90 minutes? We'll open the phone and text lines to ask you about last night and what you want to see happen next.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then a break from the politics that we all need. Don't worry, we'll get right back to it, the 12 o'clock hour with the guys from the great podcast Pod Save America. But first, we'll preview the Boston Arts and Music Soul Festival, BAMS Fest, in Franklin Park, festival organizer Toki Wright and singer-songwriter Kareem. Live Music Friday and more is ahead. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The U.S. Supreme Court has released major opinions this morning. That includes one of the most anticipated decisions this term. The court ruled on a federal law used against rioters involved in the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. The High Court says that in order for federal prosecutors to use the law, they have to show that the rioters blocked the use of documents or other things in an official proceeding. The case now goes back to a lower court to find out if this narrower interpretation of the rule applies to defendants. In a second decision, the High Court overturned a 40-year-old decision affecting how federal agencies regulate mandates that have been passed by Congress. Until now, this has made it easier for the federal government to regulate matters such as the environment, workplace safety, public health, and consumer protections. It's known as Chevron, and conservatives have long opposed it. They say arguments about these rules should go to courts and judges, and they should not be decided by highly trained experts who work for federal agencies. In yet another decision, the Supreme Court has supported a ban on public camping in Oregon. It's a major case about homelessness. The court has made it easier for cities to ban sleeping outside. NPR's Jennifer Ludden reports the decision is a win for dozens of cities that want more power to manage a record number of people living on streets and in parks.
The Supreme Court decision overturns lower court rulings that had said it's cruel and unusual to arrest or fine people if they have nowhere else to go. That applied to 9 Western states, some of whom argued it hamstrung their efforts to keep public spaces safe and open for everyone. The decision allows cities to enforce camping bans even if they don't have shelter space to offer. Advocates for the unhoused say fines and jail time will only make it harder for people to get into housing, and they say the decision will not change the larger problem driving homelessness, a severe housing shortage and sky-high rents. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News, Washington.
Last night's debate between President Biden and former President Donald Trump featured them both trading personal insults. They sparred over issues such as abortion and the economy. Trump continued to lie about the outcome of the 2020 presidential election, but Biden is drawing a lot of criticism for his halting performance with his raspy voice and moments when he appeared to lose his train of thought. Pennsylvania Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro says Trump is the candidate with the problems.
Joe Biden had a bad debate night, but Donald Trump was a bad president. And I think what you saw last night was a pathological liar in Donald Trump, who lied about his record, who has dangerous ideas about where he wants to take this country.
He spoke to CNN. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrials are up about 230 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Prospective Gen Z voters in Massachusetts are among those having mixed reactions to last night's presidential debate. It was the first between President Biden and former President Trump this election season. Kunal Botla is a Lexington town meeting member and an undergrad student at Tufts. He picked up on the chaos of the evening.
I think it was a pretty clear example of what a lot of people are feeling in terms of the whole political situation at the moment being really messy and not really yielding much conversation about substance or about the issues that most Americans care about, but instead being more of a hashing of almost like a personal feud.
Some local lawmakers also responding. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren posted on X last night, "The choice is clear. President Biden is a strong champion for working people who's fighting to lower costs, restore abortion rights, and defend democracy." Well, the month-long closure of the Sumner Tunnel starts a week from today to finish upgrades to the almost century-old piece of infrastructure. MassDOT is out this morning with a mitigation plan that includes making the entire Blue Line free in both directions, discounted tolls for the Tobin Bridge and Ted Williams Tunnel, and making the East Boston Ferry free. In addition, the Winthrop Ferry is adding Logan Airport Stop, and 5 Chelsea bus routes, which include routes to and from Logan, will also be free. Red Sox open a series with the Padres at Fenway tonight. In the forecast, mostly sunny, upper 70s today, 69 in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from Sony Pictures Classics, presenting Daddy-O, starring Dakota Johnson and Sean Penn. A woman and a cabbie connect and engage in intimate and mysterious conversations during a taxi ride. Now playing only in theaters.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming, thank you, on youtube.com/GBH News. Later in the show, we're going to be joined by the guys from the great political podcast Pod Save America, as well as John King from CNN, who'll do his debate analysis. He did it last night. He'll do it again for us a little bit afternoon. We're going to be gone for most of next week, Tuesday through Friday. We'll be doing a repeat of shows, but we will be back on Monday because the Supreme Court is finally going to issue its immunity decision involving President Trump's alleged crimes. We'll be back here at the Boston Public Radio on July 9th with Boston Public Library, on July 9th for another edition of Ask the Mayor. And meanwhile, you can check out our TikTok page. It's a very funny one involving Jim, Boston Public Radio.
One last thing. Hey, Marjorie, if you need a little soothing on an unsoothed day, if that's a word, we just heard the rehearsal of some performers.
Incredible.
So we was at 11:30. I would really get on down here. So on to the subject at hand. Debating last night against Donald Trump, Joe Biden officially defeated Medicare. If you woke up feeling anxious after last night's debate, you're certainly not alone. If you're looking for a space to work it all through, you've come to the right place. A lot of today's show is going to be getting your reaction to the two presidents' performances, what they will mean in November, how Democrats need to handle the next 3 months if they want to stop Trump from securing another 4 years in the White House. And we're starting with you. Call or text at 877-301-8970. Where do the Democrats go from here? Does President Biden need to step aside for the good of the country? If yes, who should be brought in to replace him? And how about Trump and his 90 minutes of pathological prevarication, essentially 90 minutes of nonstop lying? The number is 877-301-8970. And by the way, there's a lot of reporting that Democrats are saying he's got to step aside. But we've reached out to Massachusetts Democratic leadership, senators, congresspeople, the governor. Every one of them was unavailable or declined to join us today. The number is 877-301-8970. What's your takeaway?
Well, I was stunned. I was shocked. It was very painful and sad to watch Joe Biden unable to put together any kind of cogent arguments or almost no cogent arguments. I couldn't believe how out of it, frankly, he seemed. Something has happened to his voice, something has happened to his gait. We don't know what that is. On the other hand, as you point out, President Trump lied throughout this whole performance, but it almost doesn't matter because I think all anybody's talking about is Joe Biden and can he continue, and I don't think he can.
In any case, I would say this is the worst debate I have ever seen. And I don't mean the two candidates alone. I mean for our country. Van Jones, one of the commentators who worked for Barack Obama on CNN last night, described it as the old man and the con man.
Yeah.
And I think honest people have to say it's pretty hard to suggest, no matter how much you want to beat Donald Trump, that Joe Biden can survive as president. I don't mean survive life and death, but survive as president until he's 86 years old. I think that's a reality. I don't know if it's a reality for the president himself and what he's going to decide to do. And at the same point, Trump, in my opinion, other than not losing it last night, in part because of the format of the debate, he was doing what he's done since he came on the public scene as a politician, is literally lied virtually every single answer. And for those who made the mistake of not watching this last night, Democrats in blue states are murdering babies after they're born.
Which no one corrected on CNN.
Cops welcomed in the January 6th insurrectionists, or hostages as he calls them.
Not corrected.
Immigrants coming into this country are killing Social Security. Well, it's actually the reverse, because they're paying into Social Security but not receiving the benefit. Biden's going to raise your taxes 4 times what they currently are. Continued denial about losing the election in 2020. It was like this endless litany of grotesque lies. And one of the troubling parts, as you hinted, is Joe Biden was not up to the task to essentially counter almost any of these things, and particularly even on things like abortion, which is such a central issue for voters in this country, and particularly a plus for the Democrats. I'm totally unable to respond. So, in any case, and one thing I'd caution today, well, people can call and say obviously whatever they want, they always can. I would really appreciate if you spare the ageism criticism. This is not about Joe Biden being 81 years old. We had an 81-year-old person on the show yesterday. You know who it was?
Doris Kearns Goodwin.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would say Doris Kearns Goodwin is not one of the sharpest people on the planet. People age differently.
Obviously, and the president has really aged, and it's incredible that he could do what he did back in January at the State of the Union, and then do what he did last night.
Well, that makes it even scarier, doesn't it, considering the small period of time? So again, if you want to call us ageist, because I think Marjorie and I are on the same wavelength, you're entitled to it. But I just want to say in defense in advance, it's not about his age. It's about his ability, in my opinion, at least based on last night, to do the job. 877-301-8970 is our number. Sean and Dedham, you're first on Boston Public Radio.
Jim and Marjorie, it's been a while.
Oh, my God.
Hey,
this
Sean.
is the Sean. How are you, Sean?
Great to talk to you.
I'm doing great, guys. Jimmy, you still the pregame show for the Red Sox?
No, I was NECN, and I don't work there anymore. But thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. What do you think of last night?
They fight. Unbelievable. They're both great golfers, Jim. Great golfers. I was excited to hear about their golf game.
Yeah.
I could be honest with you. You just made it. The reason I'm calling Jimmy is you just said the Democratic leadership doesn't want to come on and talk about Joe Biden. That, to me, says it all. They know what I think we all know. It's time for Joe to step aside, and the Democrats need to pick a better leader. I think we all need to pick a better leader on both sides, really. But they need to do something and do something fast, because that ship, the Titanic, is sinking.
Sean, it's great to hear your voice again. Call us again soon. By the way, and we should make that clear, the one thing Democrats, at least behind the scenes, were being honest about last night is that Joe Biden may not be up to the job. There are no Republicans who are honest about the fact that they have a felon, a rapist, a fraudster who is, frankly, not up to the job, even had he not had that record behind him. At least the Democrats behind the scenes are raising a question that everybody knows needs to be raised.
Well, let's play a little sound from John King. He's going to join us in person later in the show.
Yeah.
But this was John King last night on the
He was
post-debate panel right after the debate ended last night. Here's John King.
This was a game-changing debate in the sense that right now, as we speak, there is a deep, a wide, and a very aggressive panic in the Democratic Party. It started minutes into the debate, and it continues right now. It involves party strategists, it involves elected officials, it involves fundraisers. And they're having conversations about the president's performance, which they think was dismal, which they think will hurt other people down the party in the ticket, and they're having conversations about what they should do about it.
And by the way, the reason Marjorie called, we talked about this before, there is no more even-handed, fair reporter in America than John King. And when John King makes those kind of comments, it was the first comment on the post-debate discussion on CNN, you know how serious the stakes are and how serious the problem is.
Trump was winning before this debate, right? He was winning in a lot of the swing states.
Slightly, yeah, he was.
So it was a neck-and-neck race before then, and we have talked for months about people's fears about Joe Biden being not up to the job anymore, that he has lost his fastball. And a lot of people in the text already I'm getting, they're not only mad at Joe Biden, they're mad at Jill Biden, and they're mad at the Democratic Party for leaving us with this choice, which people have signaled for months they didn't want.
Well, by the way, and Biden, to make Biden is the one who wanted the early debate last night. So those staff people and his family members decided it was okay for Joe Biden to take the stage. I'm totally with you.
Let's go to Andrew from Kings Point, New York. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Andrew.
Yeah, hi. I'm furious at Joe Biden for his selfishness. He's clearly not up to the task. He looked and sounded like a frail, decrepit shell of a man last night. And by insisting on those silly debate rules about no microphone and no audience, he actually forced Trump to become disciplined
I totally
and
agree.
restrained. And Trump lied through his teeth constantly, but he didn't look like a lunatic. And unfortunately, Biden actually normalized him by not effectively pushing back on his lies. And the Democrats are really in the hole right now. And I'd like to see some Democrats grow some spine and backbone and have an intervention with Joe and Jill and tell him that he's got to leave.
Andrew,
because Trump is a fascist.
Andrew, it was an excellent call. Thank you for making it. And by the way, we discussed this, I think, with Doris Kearns Goodwin yesterday, but with somebody in the last couple of days. Everybody remembers, what was it, August 7th of that year, that Barry Goldwater led a delegation of, I think, 3 Republicans to meet with Richard Nixon and said he didn't have any support anymore. He had to go. Does that happen here? Who would do that? Is that Barack Obama?
I think that's
Is it Bill Clinton and Barack Obama? Who does that?
I think that's a great question. I mean, I think ultimately Joe Biden is going to decide to step aside.
Which he may not, by the way. People say he's very stubborn.
And he has these ideas that he's been down before and he can get up again. And you know, he has he's accomplished a lot as the President of the United States, but it's just clear to people. I mean, listen to this texter. I watched the debate with 2 friends, both Democrats. In the first 10 minutes, we all let out audible gasps and covered our eyes. Biden looked like a deer in the headlights with his mouth agape. He failed to complete a sentence, missed multiple layups that were handed to him. I am so angry with Biden for not stepping aside and mad at the Democratic Party. And I think that's kind of a consensus perspective here.
I'm really glad you read that because, you know, to quote Van Jones the second time, I know I speak for you in this. We both believe that not only is Joe Biden an incredibly decent person, but has had a very successful term. That doesn't affect, I don't think, how people should feel about whether or not his candidacy makes sense in 2024.
To the rest of what Van Jones says, he said, from my heart, I love that guy. He's a good man. He loves his country. He had a test to meet tonight, and he failed to do it. There's a lot of people who are going to want to see him take a different course now. We're still far from our convention. It is time to take a different way forward. He backtracked later in the show, and I guess he was getting a lot of calls and texts from people saying...
He said some black leaders were calling him, very upset with him.
And that maybe he should wait a couple of days before he threw Biden under the bus. But I think Biden threw himself under the bus.
You know, also for those who, I assume, I haven't seen the numbers, I assume, did everybody in the audience here watch the debate anybody not watch the debate last night? You can be honest, we're not going to ridicule you. Well, here's 1-2 people, okay. But the vast majority of people did watch. I admire your honesty, by the way. This was the worst moment, and I think the moment that caused everybody to say, oh my God, what's going on here? Here's Joe Biden talking about health care.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
It's really sad. I mean, it's really a sad and painful moment for a guy who's devoted his whole life to public service. It was really sad, not just for the country, I would argue, surely not just for the Democratic Party, but for Joe Biden and the people who love him. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and the things that really matter to people, abortion, we've talked about that many times. You would think there have been so many stories in the last few months about women in extremis, women whose health has been damaged terribly, who have been near death, getting septic and having to be near death. He could have just told one of those stories. Instead, he started out with this kind of hard to follow thing about first trimester and second trimester, and then he goes to a woman who was murdered by somebody that came into the country illegally, but you didn't really know what he was talking about. What did this have to do with abortion? I mean, he was trying to preempt Trump for talking about this later, but it was just non sequiturs. That was what was so
sad.
Disturbing. Yeah.
Sharon in Newburyport, you're on Boston Public Radio. We're obviously talking about last night's debate and what happens now. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you, Jim. I am nervous, so please just bear with me.
Sure.
I watched the debate in pieces because I was out somewhere and I watched it on my phone on the way home, whatever. And yes, I was very disappointed the first time that I saw it, but then I decided to watch it again. And President Biden was clearly not feeling well, number one. And as you said, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, it's hard to debate crazy. My God, Trump is so terrifyingly insane. He's just not normal. He cannot speak one sentence that makes sense. He only talks about himself. He doesn't care about America or Americans. I don't blame President Biden. If you watch it a second time and you watch his face, how sad he looks at a president, a former U.S. president, talking about the current president, our country, and
well, Sharon, if I can interrupt you, that's who Trump is. Trump is no different, other than the fact that he didn't talk all over Biden. Trump was Trump last night. That's who he is. He's a lying machine. But having said that, lying machine or not, a guy who wants to be president, Joe Biden, again, has to be able to deal with it. And respectfully, I don't think he could. Sharon, thanks for the call. Heather Cox Richardson, the legendary historian on Twitter. Why is everyone talking about Biden's voice without mentioning that Trump didn't say a single true thing in the entire debate? I would say to Heather, whom we admire greatly, two things can be true. Donald Trump is a lying machine, and Joe Biden appears not to be up to the task of the presidency.
I think the difference is, with all due respect, we knew Donald Trump was a lying machine.
Yeah.
We expected him maybe to go a little crazier than he went last night, because when he was asked about retribution, he didn't say he was going to get SEAL Team 6 and start shooting. He said his retribution was going to be success, so he obviously decided he better temper the vengeance kind of thing. But we knew who he was. We were hoping we were going to be vindicated, those of us who thought that Biden was not as far gone as he appeared last night. That's what we hoped for.
And because of the performance, extend what Heather Cox Richardson said a minute ago, what we're not talking about, but clearly should. Dana Bash asked him 3 times, Donald Trump, if he would accept the results of the election, even if he lost. He never answered the question. The third time he said, of course I will, if it's fair.
Right.
And obviously, he would determine it to be unfair if it turns out he lost. So that should be a story.
Yeah, if the election is free and fair, but then he said the fraud was ridiculous, so basically he's not going to accept at the rate things are going, if it's Biden versus Trump, I think he will accept the results of the election, because I hate to say it, but if this doesn't change, I think Donald Trump is going to win.
By the way, we should make clear before we take a break, based upon what we all read, and I'm sure you all read this last night, the only way the Democrats could have a different nominee is if Joe Biden decides to step down as the nominee. There's no other procedure within the party for there to be somebody else. He's the presumptive nominee. He's won 95% of the delegates. It's in his hands. We got to take a break.
Okay, we're taking a quick break. We're going to be right back with State Senator Jason Lewis, who's going to render his opinion on this. It's kind of a surprising one. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Paris first hosted the Olympics more than a century ago, the year 1900.
Some of the people didn't know they were competing in the Olympics.
Now in 2024, it's a whole new ballgame.
for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. This summer, Paris is going to be the center of the world.
The Paris Olympics, then and now, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And MIT Federal Credit Union, committed to helping homeowners make use of the equity in their home with the MIT Federal Credit Union Home Equity Loan or Line of Credit. Learn more about how you can become a member at mitfcu.org. And Wellwithal, believing that self-care is community care. Wellwithal is committed to leading the fight for health equity, donating 20% of profits to support underserved communities. They won't stop until it is truly well with all. Wellwithall.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude and Margery Egan. We're live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In the 12 o'clock hour, we'll talk to the three guys from the fabulous podcast Pod Save America, all Obama alum, I should say. They're going to be at the Wilbur tonight, and John King is going to call in. We will continue taking your calls and texts in about a minute or two, but I mentioned at the top of the show, we reached out to much of the Democratic leadership in Massachusetts in the last couple of hours. Senators, congresspeople, the governor, every one of them was either unavailable or declined to join us or never got back to us. One Democrat did, and here's what he tweeted today, quote, "We should have an open Democratic Party convention in August to select our presidential nominee. I'm calling on fellow Democrats to join me in this cause." That was the tweet of State Senator Jason Lewis from the 5th Middlesex District. Senator Lewis, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jim and Marjorie. It's good to be back with you.
Good to have you.
So you are willing to say publicly what a lot of Democrats reportedly are saying privately. Why'd you stick your neck out?
Yeah, well, Marjorie, we are on a train right now, and the train is headed for derailment and a fiery crash. And our choice is to, jump off that train. It's scary. We may break a leg when we jump off, but that's a lot better than dying in a train crash. And that's where our party and our country are headed on the track we're on right now.
Senator Lewis, what kind of feedback have you got from fellow Democrats? Have some people said to you they celebrate what you're doing? Have others said to you they condemn you going public with this? What kind of feedback you got?
Yeah, it's mixed, Jim, but I really think that I have a responsibility, as an elected Democratic leader, although, I'm at the state level, not the federal level,
sure, to
stand up and say what I think needs to be said at this point. And, I have enormous respect for Joe Biden. He's a lifetime of distinguished public service, as you've said, just on your show.
Sure has.
But it's time for him to step aside, and we are lucky that we have, experienced, talented young leaders in the Democratic Party who I think could step up and could become our nominee, and there's still plenty of time for them to run a campaign and I think defeat Donald Trump.
Who would your choice be?
Yeah. Like who?
Oh, goodness, there's a long list. Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan's governor, Gavin Newsom, of course, Pete Buttigieg, already ran previously, Josh Shapiro, the new Pennsylvania governor, Kamala Harris, of course. Hey, how about Maura Healey?
I've heard of her. I heard of her. I think she's the governor of Massachusetts. So, Senator Lewis, before you go, are you assuming that come Monday your desk is going to be out in the hall in the state Senate or not?
I hope not. I hope not. Look, this does come down to Joe Biden personally making the decision.
Of course it does.
But, my thought is if enough leaders in the Democratic Party are willing to speak up and call for him to step aside, it's time, and to retire gracefully, then maybe he'll do that, and then we can have an open convention, which, by the way, we used to have open conventions for centuries before the 1970s.
Senator Lewis, we really appreciate, whether people agree with you or not, we appreciate your candor, and we appreciate your making some time for us. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Jason Lewis, State Senator, 5th Middlesex. And by the way, before we get back to the calls, we didn't mention this. We did mention that the immunity decision will finally be handed down by the Supreme Court on Monday. Marjorie and I will come in to bring that to you. A major decision was handed down, well, several, but one in particular relating to the insurrection is the Supreme Court in a 6-3 vote with an odd grouping of the 6, I should say, and the 3, ruled that the obstruction charges against several hundred convicted or being tried insurrectionists violate the Constitution. The charges against them will be dropped, and a couple of the counts, from what I recall, the 4 counts against Trump in the January 6 charges also will probably fall, but others will survive. So that was a big deal, but immunity is Monday. 877-301-8970.
Here's Eric from Lynn. I feel deeply bad for Biden. He could have been an American hero, getting us through a tough period, then handing the reins of power to the next generation. Instead, his pride has endangered his legacy and our country. I wish the Democrats would listen to the left and progressives who saw this coming 2 years ago. You remember Joe Biden ran as a transitional president. He said that when he was running, and I think that was the assumption many people, including myself, had. He was going to run for 4 years and do exactly what Eric from Lynn said. And somewhere along the line, he decided he wasn't going to let go, and so here we are. But I do wish that the party members had been what's incredible about this, how many months have we been talking about the double haters, people being very unhappy with Joe Biden, liking his policies.
And Trump. Double haters hate them both.
Yep, being very happy with Joe Biden's policies, which are much closer to what the American people want than Donald Trump's, but being very unhappy with him as a candidate second time around. And it's almost like they got an idea to shove people down the voters' throats, because Hillary Clinton was second only to Donald Trump as the most unpopular candidate we ever had. And then they did it again with Joe Biden. I just don't get it.
Think she's making calls this morning? I bet you she is.
Yes,
Mike
I do.
in Swansea, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Pleasure.
I essentially had, my comment was that had you elected Bernie Sanders the first time around, instead of having Senator Clyburn kneecap him by supporting Joe Biden, and then essentially Buttigieg and Klobuchar dropping out of the race the next day, even though Bernie was pretty much killing everybody in that primary, you wouldn't have this problem. He's also 81 years old.
82.
But he sure, 82, but he sure doesn't come across when you hear him on TV,
I agree.
in interviews, the way Joe Biden came across. That's for sure.
Well, you know, Mike, the only place I'd disagree with you is when you said Jim Clyburn, who's the most senior black member of Congress. He's from South Carolina, who's throwing his support to Joe Biden, changed the whole trajectory of the primary campaign in 2020. I don't think he kneecapped anybody. He's a great admirer of Joe Biden, and he supported the person he thought was the best candidate, and he didn't think it was Bernie Sanders. So with the exception of that, I think you make a fine point. Mike, thank you very much for the call. 877-301-8970. You know, we talked a lot about anxiety before this thing. Could you ever have I have never, by the way, I know I'm hyperbolic. I have never seen a debate on both sides for two very different reasons that was as horrible ever at any level of government. One candidate literally saying almost nothing that was honest or truthful, even though his performance was quite good, I have to say.
He said he had the biggest heart in the stage.
He did. Well, of course.
That was
well, that's an opinion thing. It's not quite whatever. And obviously what we've talked about with Joe Biden, it was just abysmal. And you say to yourself, how did we end up here? I don't know the answer to that question. John in Newport, hi.
I was just, first of all, I was struck, first time, long time.
Thank you.
I was struck by remembering that yesterday Doris Kearns Goodwin said that when her husband was prepping Kennedy, that Kennedy didn't talk for the couple days before the debate, and he was writing his answers down on legal pad. I can't believe that the people behind Biden essentially screwed this up so much that they let him go out there sounding hoarse like that and unprepared and just not sounding like he's up for the job. And I'm with John King and him saying that the Democrats are panicked, because I'm panicked really for the country, because if Trump wins again and he puts 3 more people on the court and institutes all these authoritarian things, I'm panicked for the country right now.
Every word you said, I agree with, John. Thank you for the call. I feel exactly the same way you do.
I said this, I don't know if I said it today, but I've certainly said it before. I wish we had a little transparency. Bill Clinton used to lose his voice constantly because he was yelling and screaming so much. He was giving speeches, and he would talk about being hoarse. He almost couldn't talk. If Biden had lost his voice because he'd been talking all week long, I would have liked to known that. If Biden can't walk normally anymore because he's got arthritis or he's got whatever he's got, I just like to know. You see him even walking out on the stage last night, the first second you were like, oh my God. And the expression on his face where his eyes were almost not blinking, it was really frightening.
The New York Times, it rarely says these kinds of things. On their live blogging of the thing last night, described it as his mouth agape was the word they used. His eyes darting back. I have to say, and I don't want to, I know you're going to make fun of me here as if I'm whatever. The walking doesn't bother me, and even the voice didn't bother me, even though it's symptomatic of a problem. The problem was it was incoherence for much of 90 minutes.
It's not,
you can be hoarse and have really solid, coherent, sharp thoughts. He didn't.
Right, but I'm saying it's not knowing what has happened.
Maybe you're right.
We talk about transparency all the time, from medical issues.
No, you're
mental
right
issues,
about that.
cognitive
That's
issues,
true.
like
That's true.
Just say he's been rehearsing all week. He's lost his voice. He sounds terrible, or he's got arthritis. Millions of people have arthritis. Doesn't affect your head. Just say Joe has got arthritis. He doesn't walk as well as he used to. What is the problem with that? Instead, you don't know. And it's scary not to know.
You know, if you're right, let's assume you're right. I think the quid pro quo, though, should be if his people were honest, Trump's people before this debate should say, yes, it's true, our candidate is mentally ill, and he's going to lie for 90 minutes. So at least you know in advance what to
oh my God! He said Charlottesville was a made-up story. He said Trump. He never said losers and suckers to. About the soldiers, and that was a big lie too.
Nick Kristof, who was with us yesterday from the New York Times, headline of his column today, President Biden, it's time to drop out. Tom Friedman, another admirer of Joe Biden in the New York Times today, said it's time to drop out. Here is a part of what Kristof wrote. But I hope he reviews his debate performance Thursday evening, withdraws from the race, throwing the choice of a Democratic nominee to the convention in August. The convention is August 19th, by the way, is the date the convention begins.
Okay.
We have time for one more.
We have time for one more. John in the car, thank you for calling.
Hi, John.
Hi, thanks. I think the problem is media, social media. Everybody has their own algorithm that they're tuned into, and they don't hear the other side. A typical, perfect example is the Charlottesville. Right after he said there were very fine people on both sides doing their civil duty and whatnot, he said, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis. They should be condemned. He said it right after. And the media, it's kind of like, because I watch all media sources. I'm watching Al Jazeera, Sky News Australia, and you could see the dementia setting in even 2 years ago. And our media won't, it's kind of like we're living in two different worlds.
Well, John, with the question that I asked John King, Chuck Todd, and somebody, maybe Doris Kearns Goodwin, I can't remember who was the other day. Well, you're saying, why isn't the media honest about what they see in Joe Biden? Why isn't the media honest about what at least I, as a layperson, see as serious mental illness in the Republican nominee? The answer is we don't know how to deal with those kinds of issues as journalists, and I agree with you. It's time we do. John, thank you much for the call. Appreciate it. By the way, we're going to continue taking calls throughout the whole show about yesterday's debate.
Yes, we have been getting your reactions to last night's debate, but it is time for a little respite here by way of some spectacular music. It is Live Music Friday, Saturday and Sunday in Franklin Park. The Black Arts and Music Soul Festival is taking place. We're going to talk with the organizer, Toki Wright, and Boston's own singer-songwriter, Kareem. Wait to hear this gorgeous music ahead. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. A coalition of Boston theaters are producing a 2-year festival celebrating Mfaniso Udofia's 9-play cycle that follows 3 generations of a Nigerian-American family. And Sean Penn says in today's Hollywood, as a straight actor, he could never be cast as Harvey Milk. Plus, a museum skirts a gender discrimination suit by way of a ladies' restroom. We take on that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Furniture Consignment Gallery, curating pre-owned luxury home furnishings for over 30 years. Current inventory is available to view in their showrooms in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. More at FurnitureConsignment.com. And Safety Insurance, offering auto insurance policies designed to help for when the worst happens. You can ask an independent agent about safety insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In the 12 o'clock hour, we'll be joined by the 3 guys from Pod Save America, a fabulous podcast. All 3 of them, as you know, are alumni of the Obama administration. And CNN's John King will call us briefly. We're going to get back to completely depressing you about the state of our country, as we do really well in a couple of minutes. But for now, we're going to take a bit of a summer musical escape. There's no better place to be this weekend than Roxbury's Franklin Park for the annual Boston Arts Music Soul Festival, or BAMS Fest. Tickets are totally affordable. It runs Saturday and Sunday with events for kids and adults alike. We'll learn more about it in a minute. So welcome to another Live Music Friday on BPR. With us, BAMS Fest organizer Toki Wright. He's also a big deal at Berkeley, leading their professional music department. Great to see you, Toki. Thanks for being here. And Roxbury's own Kareem, who's performing this Sunday at 2:20. Kareem's music is available on Bandcamp and SoundCloud. You can find everything at his Instagram, which is at @he's_Kareem. He's brought some of his band with him. He'll introduce them in a few minutes. Here's Kareem performing his unreleased song, Complicated.
It shouldn't have to be so complicated, but it is, and it be. More often than not, I feel jaded. This ain't for the weak, no it ain't, I swear, I swear. No it ain't, I swear, I swear. Though at times life isn't fair, there's always worse to compare, or so they say. Does that make it okay? Forget all that noise. Just tell me what's good. Tell me what's good. Tell me what's good. Tell me what's good, good. Tell me what's good. Tell me what's good. Tell me what's good. Why do I feel boxed in so often? Why am I so exhausted? Gotta start weighing my options. Stop avoiding obligations, feeding into temptation. I'm aware of my ways. Does that make it okay? I know that I can't keep blocking my own lane. Tell me what's good, 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 good. Tell me what's good, good, good. Tell me what's 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 good, 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 good. Tell me what's good, It don't always have to be so complex. 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 It don't always have to be so complex, so complicated.
Kareem,
Oh,
join us
gosh.
if you will, Kareem.
That was
It's fabulous.
gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Toki,
Ugh.
while we're waiting for Kareem to get over here, tell us about this festival. What's going to happen in addition to Kareem and his gorgeous musicians?
Absolutely. Good morning, Marjorie.
Good morning.
Well, this is the 6th BAMS Fest, Boston Art Music Soul Festival. We're really excited. It's happening down at Playstead Field at Franklin Park, starting Saturday and Sunday from noon to 9 p.m. on Saturday, noon to 8 p.m. on Sunday. We've got over dozens of artists from the Boston area, as well as Grammy-nominated and Grammy-winning major label acts like BJ the Chicago Kid and Rhapsody and Elle Varner, Butcher Brown, who just did a Tiny Desk that was pretty amazing. And we have 60 local businesses that are out there vending, a kids performance area called Kidchella, a big dance
Kidchella.
pavilion. And it's an opportunity to see a lot of the new and emerging artists that come from this area and that make soulful music. And when we talk about soul and music, we're really talking about artists that actually care about the listener. They care about the listener enough to be honest about their content and honest about their storytelling. And that's why people like Kareem are extremely important, because Kareem not only is extremely talented, but is extremely vulnerable and honest in his music. So we appreciate having Kareem on the stage.
Toki, bamsfest.org to get tickets, right?
Yes, absolutely.
We'll talk about the sliding scale in a minute. That was unbelievable,
Yeah,
Kareem.
gorgeous,
That was just
gorgeous,
You want to
gorgeous.
introduce your bandmates for a second?
Yes. So on guitar we have Jermaine Kelly.
Hey, Jermaine.
On vocals we have KLA and Eva Davenport.
You know, Kareem, you were fabulous. You have a quote, though, that I didn't know what to make of. You're quoted in an interview saying, I don't think Boston's the best place for music artists. Why'd you say that? It's pretty, why'd you say that?
So I think because we're overlooked a lot, we have an immense amount of talent, and it's just like, it just goes like unnoticed a lot. So artists like me and them, and people like Toki, are always like striving to bring like more attention to the scene.
And that's why BAMS Fest exists in part. Isn't it exactly that reason?
Absolutely. You know, if we don't celebrate ourselves, we can't wait for anyone else. So a big part of that is how do we build an ecosystem where artists can actually strive, not just survive, but thrive.
How do you build an ecosystem?
Well, it takes conversations like this. It takes support from the general community. It takes a city and a state government that understands how much a benefit the arts and culture are to the ecosystem. It takes fairness, equity, responsibility. It takes listening. I think it's a lot of things. It's how do we see ourselves as valuable and walk with that, and how do we go out and support an artist beyond just saying I like them, but putting money in their pocket, paying to go to their shows, buying their albums.
So Kareem, I think a lot of us were swooning during that song. Complicated. Yeah, it's beautiful, it's sexy, it's gorgeous. Tell us about that song.
Thank you. So that song is so I wrote it, I want to say about maybe like 2-3 years ago. I think like during the pandemic. My friend Abdul made the beat to it originally. We just performed it like acoustically, obviously.
Yeah.
But there's a beat to it, and it's gonna be like on my upcoming EP.
And the harmonies and the arranging, is that all you too? Because the harmony, beautiful.
Yes, and thank you.
You're
welcome.
welcome.
The song is basically about like, basically it's self-explanatory. Like things don't always have to be complicated. I think we make things complicated, we overthink things, and we get in our heads a lot. And it's also about like, kind of like enduring things, and like, I say in the beginning, like this ain't for the weak. And what that means to me is that like, being like in these like environments, it takes a lot of like energy and like courage and vulnerability. And yeah, that's basically what I was like getting at.
I'm glad you have them all, because you wouldn't have been here otherwise. It was really spectacular. You make a great analogy, Toki, and something I read about you, between our obsession with sports in this community. We will do anything, even if the Celtics didn't win the NBA championship. We're obsessed.
They came by here last week.
They did.
That's 20 people deep on either side of the street.
As
it was a mob
compared
scene.
to how we embrace or don't embrace the arts, particularly local artists. Let's flesh it out a little bit.
Well, I think we have artists that we can champion just like we can champion the teams. And I think we see the value in the teams, so we show up to the games, we pay for the beer, we pay for the shirts and all of the mascots and all those other things. We can do the same thing for our musicians, for our visual artists, for our sculptors, painters, for all of the people in the artistic community. And you could hold it up in a high regard like Los Angeles or New Orleans or New York City does.
But you also said, and I think it's a valid point, we've had people regularly, like from the BSO on, from Andres Nelson's to Keith Lockhart. Yeah. It seems that part of the artistic community we do celebrate.
Sure.
And so where's the disconnect, do you think?
I mean, money hangs out with money. That's kind of like,
you talking to me, or what are you doing there?
I wasn't there. No judgment. But the symphony, the orchestra, wealthy people tend to hang out with wealthy people. It just so happens that in Los Angeles, there's more wealthy people in the music industry that are building an industry for other people to come into.
Kareem, before you tell us what you're going to sing with the second performance you and your colleagues are going to do you feel it's getting more welcoming in Boston over the last couple of years?
Definitely. Like, not with just me, but like within the music community in general. Even like the last few years, like walking down the street and like people like noticing me, like,
that's great.
Oh, are you Korean? Like, stuff like that. And it's like kind of like bizarre to like experience like in the beginning, and you kind of like get used to it after.
So tell us what you're going to play, and then Toki's going to tell us again how to get tickets and what the sliding scale's like. What are you going to play this time?
So the second song I'm going to do is called Promises. This song is actually unreleased as well. I probably only performed it like maybe like 2 or 3 times in life. It's acoustic. I never recorded it. It's not out anywhere, not even for me.
We're honored.
There's no recording, so I don't even listen to it. But so it's like if you're not there, you're just not there.
Well, they're there. They're there.
Y'all are here.
So if you gently put your headphones on the desk and rejoin your colleagues, that'd be great. You want to tell us about the mechanics of the weekend, where to get tickets, how much, that kind of deal?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. bamsfest.org online. And the way that this works, no one is turned away if they're unable to pay. We believe in equitable access to arts. So if you are unable to pay nothing, come, bring a lawn chair, bring a blanket, get a hug, get a plate. If you can support us, you can go to bamsfest.org and make a donation in any amount.
And if you can afford a little bit more, do a little bit more.
We will take it.
I knew you would. Here he is again, Kareem and his colleagues. Take it away.
Thank you.
And the singer, songwriter Kareem was performing Sunday.
We just rocking out with him.
Nor has he. So thank you, because y'all just killed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
The BAMS Fest, as well as organizer Toki Wright. For more on Kareem, check out his Instagram. He's_Kareem. That's HES_Kareem. He's Kareem. And for tickets for the BAM Fest, which is Saturday and Sunday in Franklin Park, the website is bamsfest.org. Sue O'Connell coming up after the new news. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org. Part comedy, part social commentary, all fun. Jesus Trejo goes on a journey across America to explore the mosaic of our nation through the lens of stand-up comedy. Watch Roots of Comedy with Jesus Trejo tonight at 10 on GBH2.
I'm Morning Edition co-host Paris Alston.
And I'm Morning Edition co-host Jeremy Siegel. You and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org.
GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Media maven Sue O'Connell offers her thoughts on last night's debate. Then we'll bring it back local as the jury in the Karen Reed trial deliberates her fate. Sue is there. Then it's John Favreau, John Lovett, and Tommy Vitor from Pod Save America, all Obama alum. They give the D.C. insider perspective on last night's debate, where the Democratic Party goes from here, ahead of its show tonight at the Wilbur Theater.
I'm Marjorie Egan, and GBH's Callie Crossy will weigh in as well about her reaction to last night's debate, followed by Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung. She brings us back to Boston with her latest reporting on the liquor license beat, yesterday's big SCOTUS ruling rejecting a settlement with Purdue Pharma, and, of course, what she thought of last night's debate. That and your calls are next. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
Today, the U.S. Supreme Court sided with the city in its defense of its restriction. Grants Pass challenged lower court rulings. NPR's Jennifer Ludden reports on a decision that has implications for an estimated 250,000 people in the United States who are unhoused.
Lower courts had ruled it is cruel and unusual to punish people for sleeping outside if they have nowhere else to go. And that has meant that if a city wanted to clear out a tent encampment, it had to first offer people a shelter bed. And a lot of places don't have nearly enough of those. Local officials had argued this hamstrung their efforts to keep public spaces safe and open for everyone, and now the Supreme Court has agreed.
NPR's Jennifer Ludden. That ruling and others from the Supreme Court coming a day after the first general election debate between former President Donald Trump and President Biden. Campaign stop scheduled today in North Carolina and New York. The head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency is in northwest Iowa. That's where catastrophic flooding destroyed property and forced communities to evacuate away from rivers swollen with rain. Iowa Public Radio's Sheila Brummer reports flooding victims are seeking help.
Mark Casey, who lives near the Little Sioux River in Cherokee, says he's been flooded out a half dozen times, but not like this. The river crested 2 times over flood stage with his home right in its path.
So we're hoping FEMA will buy us out. They're going to come in here and declare a national disaster area.
FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell toured his town and 2 others impacted by record-breaking flooding and will decide how to respond to Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds' request to expand a federal disaster declaration. On Tuesday, President Biden granted the disaster declaration for 5 Iowa counties. For NPR News, I'm Sheila Brummer, Cherokee, Iowa.
Israel allowed the first medical evacuation of people from Gaza yesterday. First time this has happened in nearly 2 months. 19 sick or wounded children and their parents or guardians were allowed to leave. But as NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports, there are thousands more patients still waiting.
It was the first medical evacuation since early May when Israel took over the Rafah crossing in the south on the border between Israel and Egypt. Before that time, around 50 sick or injured Palestinian patients were allowed to leave into Egypt every day. But Egypt has refused to reopen its side of the crossing until Palestinians are back in control. So patients have been waiting for Israel to allow them out through Israeli territory. Medical officials in Gaza say many have died while waiting, and some 25,000 more need treatment abroad. 2 Israeli human rights organizations have petitioned Israel's Supreme Court to create a, quote, permanent mechanism to allow people to leave Gaza for medical treatment. That hearing is expected on Monday. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The Dow is up 58 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Migrants who've been sleeping at Logan Airport will no longer be allowed there. That's according to a new policy announced by Governor Maura Healey today. As GBH's Sarah Betancourt reports, the move will take effect early next month.
If the bill is approved, what's known as the charitable immunity cap would no longer limit damages to $20,000 on cases alleging sexual or physical abuse of a minor. The cap has meant sometimes attorneys won't take abuse cases, including those against Catholic dioceses. Supporters of the bill say it would allow for meaningful reparations for abuse victims, who often face lifelong impacts. Attorney General Andrea Campbell said in a statement she supports the bill. But the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network says existing law balances nonprofits' charitable missions, their ability to operate, and an ability for plaintiffs to be compensated. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Nancy Cohen.
Not the cut we were looking for. If you're the type who loves to travel to different cities and towns to check out the different 4th of July fireworks displays, fear not, some are starting tonight. In Mashpee, the town's annual community picnic and fireworks are set to take place from 5 to 9 p.m. That's this evening at Mashpee Middle High School's athletic field. The fireworks begin around 8:45. 72 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates, all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming on youtube.com. Thank you, /GBH News. Later in the show, the political analysts, the Obama veterans from the great political podcast, Pod Save America, are going to be with us. Our whole team is going to be off next week, except for Monday, when we're going to be back here because the immunity decision is going to be released then by the Supreme Court. And then we'll be back at the Boston Public Library again July 9th with another edition of Ask the Mayor. Meanwhile, if you miss us, you can check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. Let me give you a couple of updates. We announced that Sue O'Connell, who's been standing outside the courtroom in Dedham in the Karen Reed case, is going to join us. She can't join us because the jury is coming back in. We don't know if it's coming back in on a verdict. We don't know if it's coming back in to say they're deadlocked. We have no idea. But the jury is apparently coming in for something. We'll let you know about that as soon as we can. We're going to speak to John King in a couple of minutes. He's breaking out of a podcast session to be kind enough to join us. But in the meantime, you should line up if you have more to say about last night and what should happen going down the line as a result of last night's debate at 877-301-8970. And as soon as John King is online he is online. John is now joining us on Zoom. By the way, in typical John King fashion, was kind enough to break out of his podcast to do this. You know he's CNN's chief national correspondent, behind the reporting projects all over the map and the battleground. John, we really appreciate you making time for us. Welcome.
Dorchester first, Jim and Marjorie first. Everything else can wait. Everything else can wait.
Absolutely. Well, John, we played clips earlier in the show, your clip, when you talked last night, right after the debate about a deep and wide and very aggressive panic in the Democratic Party after last night's debate. What have you heard since then? Is that continuing? Are Democrats actually thinking of asking the president to step aside, or what's happening?
There are a lot of Democrats, Jim and Marjorie, wishing the president would step aside. One of the things that has helped Joe Biden a great deal in his political career, when he has often been underestimated and told, you're not good enough for this, you're not a good enough candidate for this, is his stubbornness. And his stubbornness has kicked in here in the sense that their argument at the White House is, look, he had a bad night. He had a bad night, and he can recover from this. You ask a really fascinating question. Are there still a lot of Democrats who think the Democrats would be much better off with a new candidate? Absolutely. The leadership in the party right now is rallying around the president. Hakeem Jeffries, the House Democratic leader, saying, I support the ticket. Gavin Newsom last night saying, I'll never turn my back on Joe Biden. He's, of course, the governor of California and one of the people Democrats turn to as a potential replacement. But I think we need to let this play out for a period of several days. I've been at this for 36 years. I have never, ever experienced what I did last night. County chairs, members of the House, mayors, governors, members of the Senate, saying, oh my, oh my, oh my. They're saying a lot worse than that. I'm trying to be polite. It's lunch hour here. About Joe Biden's performance. And so the question is, Obama had a horrible first debate against Mitt Romney, right? And so a lot of people are trying to make a comparison to that. Incumbents often have terrible first debates. They're busy. They're the president of the United States. Plus, they think they don't need to prepare. They're good. Biden spent days preparing, though. The difference, I would argue, and John Fetterman, same thing. Remember, the Democratic candidate in Pennsylvania Senate race had a horrible debate not long after he suffered a stroke. Fetterman was getting better every day from a medical emergency. Obama was young and vibrant. He just had a miserable, horrible, probably arrogant debate because he didn't fully prepare for what came from Romney. The question Democrats are asking is, okay, Joe Biden had a tough night. Does he have the tools to recover? Does he have the energy to recover? Does he have the vigor to recover? Or did last night reaffirm all the doubts that he has the energy and the vigor and the vitality and the stamina, not only to debate Donald Trump, but to do the job as president? So I cannot overstate how profound this conversation is in the Democratic Party. However, Biden has all the delegates. It would be extraordinary to try to take it from him. Extraordinary, and I don't see that happening. The question is, as the polling comes in, as things settle in, as he talks to his sister, as he talks to his good friend Ted Kaufman, as he talks to other people around him, is there a we should think about this moment, or is it a never mind, they always say we can't do this, soldier on?
John, I want to respond to your point about, your question about can he recover, which obviously a lot of Democrats are thinking about. I'd add one question to your list, though. Will he even have the forum to recover? If I was Donald Trump, there is no way in hell I would show up at a second debate. He achieved everything he wanted. His endless lying became third and fourth story of the day. So that's sort of behind him, despite the fact checking. Why would he ever take the stage again with Joe Biden after last night?
It's a great question, Jim. And, everybody says they're on track for the next debate. That's in September. And so, that is literally an eternity away in the sense that you're going to have the Republican convention pretty soon. You're going to have the Democratic convention in middle of August before that planned September debate. You're absolutely right. And so, the Biden White House says, of course, he wants that debate. And of course, now he needs that debate, right? Now he needs that debate. And so the Trump campaign says it's on the schedule. They're not going to say we're not going to do it now. They're going to wait like everybody else and look what the data tell us. So I just think we're in this incredible, another uncharted piece of territory here. And I'm glad you brought up the point about Trump, because Biden lost the debate last night. I would not say Trump won the debate. Our Daniel Dale, our fact checker, counted more than 35 times he just flat out lied. He didn't answer direct questions, yes or no questions about will you respect the election? What about January 6th? Donald Trump did not grow last night. But does he have to grow is the question. Democrats were nervous coming in because even though the national polls are very tight, slight advantage Trump, in the battleground states, it's a slightly bigger advantage Trump. In many of those battleground states, like Nevada, Biden's running in the mid to high 30s. He's an incumbent president with a 38% approval rating who's running below 40% in some battleground state polls. That you cannot flash it. That's a five-alarm fire, and five-alarm doesn't do it justice. And so he needed last night. They asked for last night. This was the Biden campaign's idea to do this early debate. And so it was just a horrible, miserable disaster of a night. The question is what comes next. And there is the conversation among Democrats is frantic. It is a panic. But can somebody stand up at the convention and try to suspend the rules and do something? Yes. Is that going to happen? I don't believe so. I don't believe there's any evidence today that you would have a revolt. But there's a lot of pressure and a lot of conversations at the Biden White House right now. They're hoping that by the time, this is a Friday, we usually talk on Tuesdays. They're hoping when we talk on Tuesday, the volume's turned down. It's an interesting question. As of right now today, noon on Friday, I don't see that happening.
We're talking to John King. One thing before we continue, the jury is coming back in the Karen Reed case. The judge is saying there is no unanimous verdict. The juror note does not say they cannot come to a conclusion. They're just saying they haven't reached one yet. I'm sorry, Marjorie.
John King, to me, the issue is not, a bad debate, a bad performance, he had a cold or something. It was the way the president was talking. It was almost as if his brain wasn't functioning in a way that allowed him to put together cogent sentences or even to give cogent rebuttals to what Donald Trump had to say. And then you think that if he were to win, he would be 86. That's 4.5 years from now. I think it's a very scary situation. You could say something's wrong with Donald Trump's brain because he said so many weird things about washing machines and water and sharks, et cetera. But I just don't know how when he was already losing, that's President Biden, even though it was close, how he picks up people, how people can go vote with this amount of the texts we're getting. People are scared, people are sad, people found his performance painful. The people that love the guy, like Van Jones was on the stage with you last night, was saying he loved the guy, but this can't happen with this man now.
The complexity of this, the emotions of this, Marjorie, and the politics of this are just, it's deep. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper every layer you peel away. Most Democrats love Joe Biden. He's the guy who kicked Donald Trump out of the White House. They love him for that. But they see the prospect of Donald Trump coming back now, and the Biden argument that I'm the only person who can beat Trump has evaporated. I'm sorry. Last night, it was at risk anyway of being able to sell that argument. And after last night, a lot of Democrats are saying, no, sir, sorry, I don't think so. You do see the pain in Democrats. You also see the anxiety now about what to do. And, some of this is about he's the president of the United States, and that was painful to watch. It was simply painful to watch, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, independent. And the other question is, look, they're a political party. They don't want Donald Trump back in the White House. They also are at risk of losing the United States Senate. How would you like to be John Tester or Sherrod Brown or Bob Copley today, running in a red or a purple state on the ballot right now? And one of the conversations last night that was most striking to me was a lot of House Democrats also saying, we're going to go down. We thought we could, a month ago, we thought we could retake the House majority. We're not going to do it if that's our candidate, if that performance continues. Now, I'm going to say something, I've been at this a long time, and I always say that, a lot has changed in my nearly 40 years covering politics. One constant is the Democrats are really good at getting into a circular firing squad. And the Democrats tend to be more nervous. Republicans tend to just like ignore the bad stuff and stay focused straight ahead. So there's some of that at play here, but there's also a very serious conversation about both on the performance as president and the performance as a candidate, that this was a crossroads moment. And where do we go from here is a big question mark. I don't pretend to have the answers, but this is a very real conversation. This is not I often say the reason I do my new job now talking to voters is that Washington is almost always wrong, so I like to get out in the country. This is not just Washington. This is Democrats all across America, and a lot of my voters. We have 60 voters in 10 states, and even a lot of the ones who love Joe Biden are really disappointed, depressed, a little bit scared, frightened by what they saw last night.
Hey, John, we really can't thank you enough for taking time from the podcast to join us, and we appreciate it. We'll talk to you on Tuesday. CNN's John King. Thank you so much.
Atlanta podcast studio. What do you think? I got a microphone.
You look very podcasty, I want you to know, John.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you Tuesday. Thank you.
See ya.
So where are we going now?
What are we doing? Oh, we're not here
confused.
Tuesday. Forget that, John. We'll see you soon, someday soon.
We're not here Tuesday.
I know we're not, but that's exactly what I just said. So let me say that again. Was that live?
That was live.
It was live.
We're not here on Tuesday.
We won't see you Tuesday, John, okay? Because we're not working on Tuesday. How's that?
Okay. Where are we
You know what we're doing now?
Yes.
You're going to say, coming up right after the break are the three guys from Pod Save America.
Oh, the three guys from Pod Save America.
That's exactly right.
Okay, then that's what they're doing. After a quick break.
Am I right about that?
John Favreau, John Lovett, and Tommy Vitor from one of my favorite political podcasts, even though they steered me wrong back in 2016. That would be the guys from Pod Save America and Crooked Media. They're on the road as part of their Democracy or Else tour. They get a new book. They hit the Wilbur Theater at 7:30 tonight. They're here with us right now. We're going to talk a little bit more about what happened last night and their great new book and their podcast. Listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In Kentucky and other states, Jewish women are using a surprising argument in their lawsuits against abortion bans, religious freedom.
According to the Talmud, life begins at birth, not at conception.
So they say laws that define conception as the beginning of human life are at odds with their Jewish faith. I'm Scott Detrow. Hear more on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And ISS National, the International Space Station Research and Development Conference, takes place in Boston July 29th to August 1st. Attendees can hear firsthand from innovators and expand their network. Registration at issconference.org. And Furniture Consignment Gallery, curating pre-owned luxury home furnishings for over 30 years. Current inventory is available to view in their showrooms in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. More at FurnitureConsignment.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are off for the week of the 4th with one exception. Marjorie and I are coming in on Monday because the immunity decision will be issued or handed down by the Supreme Court on Monday, at least so we're told. So no BPL shows next week. We're taking the week off, etc. We're now joined by the host of the wildly popular podcast, Pod Save America. I know what you're thinking if you're listening. There are a lot of hosts at one desk, and they are, and they look fairly good. Former White House aides during the Obama administration. Here's the dreaded local angle. North Reading's John Favreau. That's pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
North Reading.
Local boys.
Wherever that is. John Lovett, we have no idea where he's from. Hi, John. Nice to have you.
Nowhere important. I from a place called New York.
Oh,
okay.
Oh, we have heard of that, actually.
It's a giant city. And the people, all right.
Do you mind if I get back to local? And Dedhams, as I say. Tommy Vitor. Hello, Tommy. How are you? Nice to have you. They're on the road as part of their Democracy or Else. I think the emphasis today is on the Else tour.
Else is ahead right now.
You can catch them tonight at the Wilbur, Great Wilbur Theater. And for tickets, go to thewilbur.com. They also just released this first ever book this week. I will hold it up. Why don't you hold it up, too? Thank you very much. Two of us holding it up. It would be called Democracy or Else, How to Save America in 10 Easy Steps. Welcome to all three of you. We're thrilled to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Having us.
Okay, so I've been a longtime fan of your podcast. It's a great podcast, very funny, very insightful. I was listening to you one last week about the debate, and I was getting all psyched about the debate. You know, Joe Biden was going to come out, and he was going to restore our faith, and needless to say, that didn't happen. So let's start with Dedham native Tommy Vitor. What did you think of what did happen last night?
I thought it was a very bad night for the people who want democracy in this country. I think Joe Biden had a couple of things he needed to do. One was put to bed concerns about his age and ability to do the job, and I think he exacerbated them at the debate last night. He didn't do a great job advancing his core message. There were times when he struggled to get through answers, and it did not go well. He also, I don't think, managed to put Trump on defense about core issues where he needed to, like abortion access, like January 6th, like the multiple convictions. So it was a very bad debate for Joe Biden.
How about North Reading's John?
It was a disaster. It was a disaster. I mean, and we all know it was a disaster. We all saw it with our own eyes, and everyone's afraid to kind of say it because we're all afraid of the fact that Donald Trump poses a threat to our democracy, to everything we believe in, everything we hold dear. We desperately don't want him to be president again. We also I think Joe Biden has been an excellent president. I think he is a fundamentally decent, wonderful human being, but part of the job of being president is to make the case for yourself, for the country, for the value of democracy, and to make the case why Donald Trump shouldn't get 4 more years, a convicted felon who tried to overturn the last election and incited an insurrection in the Capitol. And he did not make that case in the one opportunity he may have, because who knows if Donald Trump will even agree to the second debate. And what we saw last night was the biggest moment of the campaign so far, and it may be the biggest moment of the campaign from now until November.
John Lovett, you want to add something?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. It was a tough watch, people. It was a tough watch. But here, I'll say this. You know, why are people have been nervous and worried about whether or not the risk of Joe Biden's age costing the election, whether or not that was a bigger risk than trying to find somebody new, right? And so people are nervous because they love this country and they want what's best for it. What's different about the Democratic Party, what's different about this moment, is we're having this conversation because we're not afraid of each other and we respect each other. And there are going to be people that think the best thing to do is stick with Joe Biden. And there are going to be people that think the best thing to do is have an open convention. But on the Republican side, when they disagree, Donald Trump tried to have his vice president hanged. When the Republicans disagree, they have death threats and are afraid for their lives and are afraid to speak out against Donald Trump because they believe they can't, because he's a danger, because he doesn't believe in democracy, he doesn't believe in basic democratic values. So the answer in this moment, the first step is to do democracy, which is to allow a big, messy, open conversation about what's best for this country. And if Joe Biden is going to be the nominee, we'll fight like hell for him. But until the convention is done, we're going to debate who the best nominee should be.
You know, Tommy, you did a podcast, 3 of you, last night at midnight, and I listened to it. I was very disappointed, I have to say. You didn't address what Marty and I consider to be a critical issue. Should they play 9 holes or 18 holes? What would you say?
I cannot believe that the most passionate 45 seconds of the debate was about golf handicaps.
Oh, yeah.
That was when I threw up my hands and I was like, I don't know that I can do
I think
this.
I briefly left my body during
Here's what I think, let them golf. You two want to go golf together? Go golf into the sunset. Have a great time. It's what they should be doing. They're 78 and 81.
That's right. That's what
Go
they should
golf.
be doing.
Settle this thing on the course, you know?
Yeah. Biden said he had a 6 handicap. I don't know about that. That's a pretty low handicap.
Yeah.
And Trump says he's seen his swing, and he's suspicious about the 6 handicap kind of thing. You did a lot of work with Hillary Clinton. Is Hillary working the phones today? Thinking about maybe she should be the person to come back and lead the Democrats again?
Well, I'm sure if asked, she would. But but I would say this, like, I've got a lot of messages from everybody's having the same conversation, right?
And the test messages, like you guys said, the moment the debate started, it was going crazy.
And it's like, what are we going to do? Are we doomed? And there's no secret cabal at the DNC that's got a plan they're pulling off the shelf.
If only.
If only. There's not some all-powerful secret body pulling the strings. There just isn't one. And so what do I think what we're doing, what your texts look like, what our texts look like, are probably a lot of the same conversations that people like Hillary Clinton and other senior members of the party are having. Everybody saw the debate. It was less than 24 hours ago. Everybody's trying to figure out what the best thing to do going forward is. And I'm sure everybody's doing it out of great concern based on what they saw.
We're talking to Jon Favreau, John Lovett, and Tommy Vitor. They're the Pod Save America guys. Their book is Democracy or Else. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. And they're tonight at the Wilbur. You go to thewilbur.com. You know, there's been a lot of talk even prior to last night, but much more, Jon Favreau, after last night, referencing Barry Goldwater and my home state's Senator Hugh Scott going to Richard Nixon and say it's over, you don't support, etc. Does your former boss have that kind of a relationship that with Joe Biden, that he could have an honest conversation today, this weekend, next week, an honest conversation, not so much, well, about what happened Thursday night and what should happen next, or no?
They absolutely have that relationship. He absolutely can have that honest conversation. I don't know if he will or not, but I also think that the bigger question is, will Joe Biden listen, or who will Joe Biden listen to if people go to Joe Biden that are close to him? And
who does he listen to other than his wife?
His wife, his sister,
his family.
Mike Donnellan, Ron Klain, Steve Ricchetti. He's got a close circle of aides that he listens to, and I imagine they're having conversations right now. And if they decide he's the nominee and he can do it and he's up for it and he's going to prove to everyone over the next couple months that it was a bad debate and he can still beat Donald Trump, then that's Joe Biden's decision. And, you know, as 3 people who desperately don't want Donald Trump to win again, we're all in on that. But if he decides to step down or step aside, then, you know, we'll have a couple weeks until August, and it'll be a fun convention.
August 19th,
You know, Tommy, we'll get to the book in a second, and it is very clever, and I like all the pictures and all that.
It's called
kind of
Democracy
stuff.
or Else, and it's available in fine bookstores.
That is correct.
Right
that is
now.
correct. But the fact that last night was kind of a surprise to a lot of us, but the fact that people were very worried about Joe Biden early on, and that he called himself a transitional president when he ran, and that fooled a lot of people, including me, that I thought he was going to be. They're mad at him, and they're mad at the Democratic Party for not recognizing early on. It's kind of like what happened with Hillary, all due respect, is that there was no one, except for Donald Trump, less popular than Hillary Clinton, and she ended up being the nominee. And for months you've been talking about the same fears about Joe Biden, and he's the nominee again. So you do worry that the Democratic Party, or those people, don't have the capability of doing something, even if they think they need to.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of folks think that the Democratic Party, the sort of apparatus, has some mechanism to force a candidate off the ticket. They just don't. They just don't at all. Joe Biden needs to make this decision. And so I think Joe Biden's age was not a secret going into last night, right? All of us knew it was not just a concern of ours personally, but I think 68% of the electorate in the most recent New York Times poll said they had concerns about his age. So what last night was an opportunity to put those concerns to rest, and he failed to do that, and that's why people are freaking out this morning. So,
Can I stay on these connections? I mean, you guys have connections, everybody. We have connections to nobody. We pretend we do, but nobody. Did they not know? Did Jill Biden not know? Did his aides not know that no matter how much rehearsal there was this week, that Joe Biden was just not ready and may never be ready for a stage like it? Forget Donald Trump's presence. Joe Biden himself, didn't they know this was going to happen?
I think they have told themselves a few things over the last couple of years. There was a lot of hand-wringing before the midterms. Some people thought there was going to be a red wave. Democrats win the midterms. I think that's because the Democratic Senate candidates and the Democratic House candidates were quite strong, and the Republicans they were running against were quite extreme. I think the Biden White House took that to mean it has some kind of reflection on Joe Biden. I don't think it did. And then they are rightly proud of their record, of Joe Biden's record. And then he's had moments. He had a good State of the Union address.
Right.
We've seen him in other speeches where he was pretty strong and energetic. And I think that they hoped that Joe Biden would show up. They had a week of prep. He had a bunch of sleep during that week, and he prepped a lot. And so, I think they told themselves that maybe he was a game day player and he could show up.
Okay, tell us about the book, Democracy or Else.
It's got to be John Lovett. He's mentioned the book like 9 times already. So do you want to talk about the book or what?
You're a real scamp. So I think, look, we wrote the book, and we wrote it irrespective of who the nominees of either party would be. But we did write it for a moment when people feel pretty skeptical and frustrated and dispirited by politics. So it's pretty fitting that we're around, that we're getting to talk about it today. We did not know we'd be watching the most heartbreaking debate of our entire lives. But what the book is really about is how do you encourage people to participate, and what's the best way to participate, especially when people are cynical, especially when politics feels frustrating? And the answer is to get informed and find the ways that you have agency, whether at the local level, the state level, or the national level. And to remember that when you participate in politics, it's obviously a good thing for the world, but it's a good thing for you. That when politics is about more than just consuming opinions and takes, even if they're incredible, it can be dispiriting and pessimistic. But when you're out in the world talking to people, it feels additive. And after 8 years of doing this show together, we've gotten to meet the smartest, funniest, most creative organizers and politicians and canvassers, and their advice helped us make this book, and we tried to make it as funny and entertaining as possible, because if politics feels like a slog, you're not going to stick to it. There has to be joy in the fight, and it's illustrated. And I can't stress that enough. Big beautiful illustrations.
The only thing missing is it doesn't tell you how to fill out a visa application in November, but maybe that's the next.
That's for the sequel or else.
There's still the paperback.
Can we go one step up, John? We had Doris Kearns Goodwin yesterday with us.
Wow, and step down for today.
Yeah, tough day for you guys.
We were saying the same thing. No, we weren't saying the same. And one of the things we post with her, we've talked to a lot of people about it lately, but you've been in the center of the storm in recent times. 2016, as Marjorie said, the American public didn't like either candidate. 2024, we hear the term I'd never heard before, double haters. People don't like either candidate. What do you do? This is grassroots fixing, I would argue, if I can describe your book that way. How about on the next layer up? What do we do to get candidates or candidate that the American people say, I'm excited about, like I was about Barack Obama, for example?
Well, I think, as you said, you start at the local grassroots level, right? We need to, you can't just go tell someone, oh, go run for president. Though in this book, the 10th step is if you want to run for president. Yeah. So stay tuned. But I think when we got involved and we started Pod Save America and Crooked Media, it was around the 2018 midterms. And even then, we met so many really inspiring, young, diverse candidates for the House of Representatives from like all ideological sides of the spectrum, left to center left, and a lot of them ran for the very first time in their lives. They hadn't had a long career in politics. They were just inspired to go do it. And now I do think the Democratic Party has a bench beyond this election, whether it's Governor Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, or Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Raphael Warnock in Georgia, Wes Moore in Maryland. And that's just at the gubernatorial level.
How about the woman down the street who's going to join you tonight?
Maura Healey is going to be at the Wilbur with us tonight.
And what's the word on? I know it's put you in a tough spot considering you're hanging out with her tonight.
She's not listening now.
What's the word on Healey beyond our borders?
Yeah, I honestly, but beyond Massachusetts,
yeah.
Honestly, we live in Los Angeles now, so I haven't heard much. Because I know that she's a very popular governor of Massachusetts. And I would be too proud because
you went to test
Hold on. So you guys knew some out there in California.
Yeah.
What do you think? If Joe Biden does step aside, is he the logical person or not?
I don't know if he's the logical person, but he's going to be in the mix.
It'd be a big fight.
He'll be in the mix.
Yeah, big fight. Who else? You just mentioned
the vice president will be in the mix. Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, Wes Moore.
Throwing a gay governor, Jared Polis.
Yeah.
We got a gay governor out there.
Yeah, that's right.
It's pride.
That's right.
But the Kamala Harris thing, we've talked a lot about this. Let's assume, for argument's sake, that Joe Biden does step aside. No one thinks he's going to resign and have, I assume no one thinks, and have Kamala Harris become president and then obviously runs as an incumbent. Joe Biden's having a lot of trouble with young voters. I don't think that helped last night. A lot of trouble with black voters. Black women pretty much elected him, and black men were helpful too. If you pass over, if the Democratic Party passes over, Thomas, for you, a black vice president, a biracial vice president, what does that do for the Democratic coalition amongst black voters, do you think?
I think voters are smart and sophisticated, and they want a candidate that will advance the things they care about and can win. And I think I have hope that voters won't view this, if Joe Biden steps aside, this fight purely through the lens of identity. It will certainly be a part of the conversation, but I don't think it will be the end of it. I mean, I think people are scared. In 2020, people were scared to death of Donald Trump getting reelected. I think that will be the case this time, and electability is going to be the word you then hear over and over and over again.
I also think if Kamala Harris ends up with the nomination in this scenario, it will be because the delegates at the convention believe that Kamala Harris is the party's best chance to win and the best chance to advance the party's agenda over the next 4 years. And I think that will be true whoever ends up the nominee if this happens.
John Lovett, I'm a lot older than you, and so I grew up in the halcyon days when I thought, our government sooner or later, they might go through all these machinations, but they'd eventually arrive at the right place, kind of like that Winston Churchill line back from World War II. I have lost that faith, and the biggest part of my losing that faith has been the Supreme Court. This morning we thought they might have the immunity decision come down. They didn't. Now they're going to wait until Monday. And it seems like we have not just a conservative court now, but a corrupt court. And I wonder how that plays into what you guys do in the podcast and what you hear from people when you talk to them about the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the many pieces of evidence on the list that makes people feel really down, makes things feel hopeless, right? We elect Joe Biden, but we have this Supreme Court that overturns Roe v. Wade, that undermines the right to vote, that kicks the can on whether women in the parking lot of a hospital can get desperate medical care because they know it's bad politics, so they'd rather leave it to when it's not an election year. Like, all of that makes you feel like, well, what does it matter what I do? What does it matter if I get involved? But I think it's worth remembering, like, that's exactly what they want, right? They want people to feel like, oh, Joe Biden can't do anything, or my vote doesn't matter. You look at the places where they've kind of been on the leading edge at the local level of experiencing this kind of anti-democratic fervor. You look at Wisconsin, you look at North Carolina, and first, Republicans, they run roughshod, right? They take over the state, they stack the Supreme Court, they draw maps, they choose their voters instead of the other way around. But then what happens? People start to organize, they start to fight back. And it may take a long time, it may take more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 elections, but in the end, the best answer to this kind of anti-democratic fervor is to beat it with even more democracy. And in states like Wisconsin, in states like North Carolina, you see where it can work, where people are so animated by the need to protect their basic rights and democratic prerogatives that they come out in greater numbers and win.
Can I just say that doing this standing up is fun?
Yeah,
I really like
better
this
than
vibe.
sitting.
Well, you get less tired.
Yeah, and
because we're here for 3 hours, you get less tired standing
And
up.
I love the audience. I love that there's an audience here.
Also, if you're ever in Dedham House of Pizza, excellent.
Hornet's Nest in North Reading.
Yeah,
That's
Dedham.
And if you want to, and there's some really, if you're in Boston and you're looking for some great restaurants, I recommend New York.
Dedham's where the Karen Reed's trial is going on.
I know.
Right now, the jury just came back.
We have a lot of famous trials. Sacco Vanzetti.
That's right there in Dedham. That's
by the way, the judge, I should have said this, the judge judge said after lunch the jury should go back and keep deliberating. That's the current state of affairs in Dedham. So what do you guys, if people show up tonight, you go to thewilbur.com to get tickets. There are a few left. What do you exactly do for an audience? John, I'm looking at you. So what do you do on this thing?
What do you do? You know what? We haven't had much time to think about it yet. After this interview, we're hoping to go back to the hotel and meet up with Dan Pfeiffer and plan the show. No, we talk about the news of the day. We will talk about the reaction to the debate. We'll talk about what comes next. We'll be interviewing Governor Healy. We'll play a game. And
what kind of game we playing?
We got to figure that out too.
We want to make you laugh so you don't cry.
Yeah. I just have a question for all you guys. I mean, you knew Barack Obama pretty well, worked for him. You knew Hillary really well. What was it like working for Obama? Let's start with, yeah.
So I started working for him in 2004 on his Senate race. So I was the youngest guy in the press office, and by no means was I in the important meetings offering him my opinion. I was just kind of there and around and driving the press van and going to events. But I think the thing about the Obamas, especially at that time, that made them such effective politicians, both of them, Michelle as well, is they were normal people.
Yeah.
They lived in a small condo. They just paid off their student loans. They were like very connected to the community they lived in, the community they represented. And I think that came through in his Senate campaign and then in his presidential campaign, whereas some of his opponents, not naming names here, had been kind of in the sort of elite world of Washington politics for an entire lifetime, and maybe hadn't driven a car in 30 years. Stuff like that. Talking about Mitt Romney.
Oh, you're talking about Mitt Romney.
Actually, he had driven a car with Seamus on the roof.
Oh my God!
Right.
About that.
That's right. Yeah.
You know what? The Christie Nome is the new dog driver.
You just have to put a dog on a roof to get approbation. Now it's like it's
gonna shoot him. Absolutely, and the goat too.
You know, I just realized, speaking of Obama, John Favreau, we worked for 6 months a bunch of years ago to get Barack Obama to call into the final monthly show of Deval Patrick. And he did. And on the day that he did, we were summoned to a phone call by one of your colleagues who spoke to us like this. Jim and Marjorie, you shall say nothing except, hello, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. President. You will not speak to him. You will do nothing except introduce him to the...
Having met you, great advice. Exactly the right way to handle you.
That's a good one, John.
Very good staffing. Good for them.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
He would love to talk to you guys, I'm sure.
I'm sure
I'm picturing him now. He's going to be so happy. He was the best boss that I ever had or ever will have. He was like patient, kind, generous, empathetic.
Yeah.
I wrote speeches with him for 8 years.
Yeah.
He never once yelled at me, lost his patience with me. He is brilliant. I got to learn writing from one of the best writers I've ever known.
Okay.
Let me bum a
His
cig.
wife, in her book, this is what I loved about her book, said it was really annoying to be married to him, how he just kind of sashayed in and everything seemed to come easy. She had to work so hard, and how he left her alone to go off and campaign with her. She was doing those fertility shots in her thighs all by herself. I love the fact that she kind of trashed him a little bit. That was really...
See, one of our coworkers just wrote, after they describe Obama, one of our coworkers says, sounds like the complete opposite of Jim.
That's right.
Jesus. So
Jim,
one last thing for you.
Yeah, what do you got?
Jim takes a lot of grief on the show here.
Did you already tape the end of Survivor? Or you're on Survivor 47 or something. Or you're not allowed to say that?
In the jungle.
I will be on Survivor. That's right.
And you already taped it?
Yes.
And so what happened?
Great question. Yes.
He survived.
This is why you're not allowed to talk. This is why you're not allowed to talk. You should just stand there and listen.
But you're a city boy, right? What do you know about being out in the wilderness? Where's 46? Where is the season?
The jungle.
It's just out there in the world somewhere, and you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to worry about it.
He's here. He's in one piece, so that...
Well, that is a good survive.
That's right.
You did survive. That's a very good point.
I think you're going to be out of your mind to do that kind of thing, but good for you, John.
Gentlemen, we're huge fans, both of us, of your podcast.
Yeah,
your book's great.
I said a time before we went on that I was all revved up by you guys in 2016, and then look what happened. But I'm back.
Thank you.
I'm back.
That was a bad
It's
one.
a great, fun, brilliant podcast, so thank you very much
And
for
we're
the
thrilled
podcast.
to meet you guys.
Thank you very much for
John
the book.
Lovett. Even
That's
you.
right.
Back at you.
It is. The brand new book is Democracy or Else, How to Save America in 10 Easy Steps, and heaven knows we need some help here. They've got a show tonight. These guys, John Favreau, John Lovett, and Tommy Vitor, got a show tonight at the Wilbur, plus John Lovett own show, Love It or Leave It. It's very clever. That's also tonight. Tickets at thewilbur.com. There are not many left, but there are a few left. So if you hurry up, go to thewilbur.com and pick up the book, Democracy or Else, How to Save America in 10 Easy Steps.
And Maura Healey's going to be with them tonight,
That's
too.
That's right. Maura Healey's going to be with them, too. Thank you very, very much for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
It was really fun.
It's a pleasure.
After a quick break, GBH's Callie Crossley joins us. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
And National Grid, helping businesses work toward a sustainable future by offering guidance on heat pump solutions. Learn more about how heat pumps can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions at ngrid.com/future.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are off most of next week, the whole team. We will be on Monday morning because at 10 o'clock Monday morning, the immunity decision will finally be handed down by the Supreme Court. We are back at the library on, what's that date? Tuesday the 9th? Tuesday the 9th with the mayor. Mayor Wu will join us for Ask the Mayor from 11 to noon. We're joined now by GBH's Callie Crossley. Callie's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. You can catch that Sunday nights on 89.7 at 6. You can also hear Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. And she's also, of course, co-host of GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 on 89.7 and at 2 o'clock today, live from the Boston Public Library. So please stick around, Callie. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Well, Callie, I hate to bring you down the moment you get on in your chair there, but what did you think of last night?
Well, first I want to say I'm here on my black job, in case you didn't know. So let me start there.
Yeah.
That's
pretty good.
Sort of what I have to hashtag black job.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty depressing. Somebody on CNN said it was the old man versus the con man.
That was Van Jones.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Who talked about how much he loved Joe
Yes,
Biden.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was. The problem is, as we know, because we knew this before, that even if you are at the top of your game in communication style and substance, it's hard to get people to hear, because Americans are really focused on charisma. There's nothing wrong with, wanting some charisma. They're focused on the vibe, as somebody wrote. What is the vibe that you're bringing? And so if you're short of that, it's really hard to do anything, to get anybody's attention or to have them hear what you're saying. And if you can do the best job that you say you can do, but if you can't articulate what it is and how it's worked out for everybody, people just can't hear you. They don't know what to do with it.
I'm sorry. So do you think he's got to go?
I can't make that decision.
Yeah.
I think, here's the problem with our system. This comes up every year, as you know. If everything goes well, then at the end of the presidential election, we, for the last few years, at least almost a decade, have been talking about how that electoral college is not working.
Right.
So we already have a structural problem to begin with. So I don't know how you, before you get there, deal with candidates who have amassed a great number of delegates, and a lot of support, and you could logistically, I'm not talking about where you may feel about it, but logistically make a change if all parties agreed, and none of that's going to happen, so I don't understand how that works.
I want to say something about what you said, but I want to comment on this electoral college thing. We should have mentioned this before. Nicole, if you don't mind looking up the name, there's an organization that is working hard to have states vote to throw all of their electoral votes to whoever wins the general national election. It would essentially get rid of the electoral college with no I believe Massachusetts, it's called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Thank you. And as Massachusetts, I think, has joined this, if I'm right, but they need enough states to join that will equal at least half plus one of the electoral votes needed. So there is that movement if you want to check it out. I'm so glad you used the word charisma, because a lot of people are saying, and indirectly, Heather Cox Richardson's tweet this morning was sort of like this, too much on the performance and too little on the substance. If you don't have a way to connect with voters, you can call it charisma, whatever word you want to use, then you can't move the people, not just to vote for you, but to be with you on your policy things. One of the problems with Joe Biden, Marjorie and I know I speak for her, he's one of the most accomplished presidents of our lifetime on critical issues, from climate change on the down, infrastructure, but he hasn't had the ability to communicate it. So that's not like a cheap thing, charisma.
No.
It's part of the job of being a leader, right?
Right. That's what brings people to hear you, and to pause and to think about what you're actually saying. Because so much, if everything is as we expect it to be, with both people coming at their best, even then, as you know, how many conversations have we had post-debate where people didn't hear this, misheard that, whatever. So you got to have all of the jets firing just to get to a point where people can hear you. And if you fall short of that, as I said, then that's a battle. That's a climb to get back to a point where someone would pay attention.
We've been remiss today in not talking about some of the factual things that Biden got wrong when he mentioned $15 for insulin when it's 30.
We have sound. You want to play sound
Yeah,
first?
let's play some of that.
Here's the sound. This is just some of his lies. Here's a clip of some of what Trump said that was just totally...
I was talking about Biden's mistake.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Yeah,
I'm
Biden's
sorry.
mistake said the insulin was going to be $15. It's going to be $35. He talked about the number of trillionaires, and I said, whoops, he meant millionaires. He
Billionaires.
made billionaires. Yeah, that's right. I'm as bad as Biden, I guess. So those kinds of mistakes were really unnerving to people. And I think when he had the things that he's really strong on, like abortion rights, he bollocks I thought, why didn't he tell one story of one woman and what she'd gone through? Because there's so many of those stories. And then on the climate change thing, which is another issue, particularly among young voters where he's hurting, he segued. He's talked about climate for like 2 seconds, and then he segued to what he'd done for black colleges, which is great. But talk about climate. Talk about Trump being a climate change denier.
Which,
what
by
did
the
he
way,
say?
black students are excited about as well.
Well, actually, there's a big racial element to where people get screwed in terms of climate and stuff like that. So I wondered, the ones he could be powerful on, what was he, when he was rehearsing his answers, did he forget what he said in those rehearsals? Or
I mean, we all know, in the moment, if you're at a pressured situation in the moment, so you're here every day for 3 hours. So a lot of times, what if you had just 1 hour? I'm thinking about those Olympians now, to do the thing that you practice every day for 8 hours a day, but you got one chance, and just one thing goes wrong. Nobody remembers that you were brilliant all the rest of the time, and that the practice went well. You had the one chance in the moment. That pressure is intense. So I'm sure the pressure was extra on him this way. But you're right. There seems to me there were some ways to get around being wonky. Go to your strength. His strength always has been on the stump to tell those stories.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, blah,
exactly.
blah, blah. Or here's the woman that, called me up or sent the message. I was at the hospital door and they turned me around, and if it just wasn't for fate, I would have died. I mean, there's a billion of those stories now.
A billion of them.
I'm sad to say. And please respond to, what is a black job? President Trump,
that's a
what
great
is a black
point.
job?
That's right.
And what do you mean by saying that your economic plan is that you're so glad that black voters can relate to you because you have a mugshot, and they do too? Let's have a discussion about what is your approach to. I mean, come on. I mean, there were some things for him to do it. And I was reading some of the comments, and somebody said, it is very clear to me that Biden was making the intelligent points, the ones that people should pay attention to. But it is not the job of the moderators to assist him in doing that. He has got to do some of that. So I'm frustrated with him for not doing it. Now, I will say, I'm frustrated because I am of the opinion that you need to correct lies.
Me too.
You don't have to be, you don't have to raise your voice about it. You don't have to be demonstrative about it, but just to say, you're going to let him get away with saying, I never said. There's good people on both sides when there's videotape.
Well, can I tell you,
Come on.
We talked about this
You know.
morning. The decision CNN made, and I'm admirers of both moderators, Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, the decision was made they wouldn't do fact-checking, and I think they could have split the baby, and here's how. I said this to Marjorie before the show. If one of the things that Trump said, we're going to play for you a second some of his lies. If one of the things he said was a lie about Biden or something he did, then the burden is on the other candidate 100%.
Okay.
But, for example, the first thing on the soundbite we're going to play is he said, I offered 10,000 people, National Guardsmen, and Nancy Pelosi, she turned them down. It's just not true.
That's right.
There, I think when he said
suckers and losers.
But the cops. That was the cops. A lot of law enforcement people let the January 6 people into the building. Right. There, I think Tapper and Bash should have done something. Here's a little clip of just a few of the many outright lies Trump told last night.
And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, what they say, but she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby.
You know, and he said,
he went on to say, he put the baby on the table, and then they decide what to do with the baby. Like the baby's born, and then we decide whether or not to kill the baby. That was blatant, and he said that.
Well, Dana Bash or Jake Tapper should have said, can you tell me what state, what blue state that's happening in? Right. And the answer is, it's not happening in any states.
That's right.
So I think they could have done some of that correction, and they didn't. I have one more thing to ask you about that Marjorie and I are obsessed with, is the state of the Supreme Court. We have been trying we've been on the air 25 years.
Oh my God.
We have been trying for 25 years to convince people in our listening family that there's nothing more important when you vote for a president than who he or she is going to put in the Supreme Court. Is it fair to say we've been an abysmal failure? I mean, almost nobody ever calls and says, that's what my vote is about, is who they're going to put on the Supreme Court for life. Why do people, especially if they're concerned about abortion, or they're concerned about homeless people, a bad decision on homeless people today, on and on, or insurrection, why don't they make the connection, do you think?
I don't know, but I've actually had this discussion with a voter once, and this was someone who said to me, well, I'm not voting because this was the last election, because both of them are the same. And I said, huh? And I said, well, what about the Supreme Court? She said, what about it? I said, well, whoever, you have to think about who's in position to make these decisions. She said, well, I never thought about that, to your point. So I said, well, these are the decisions that could be made by anybody who would, put somebody in place. And yes, they are supposed to have some kind of judicial independence. This court is a little bit different, but at the same time, we're talking about, the person that would select and from what constituency would they select, and on and on and on. So I mean, that was a brand new thought to this person who was actually saying to me, they're both alike, and I don't think I'm going to vote.
And by the way, I've said this a lot the last few weeks, so I'm sorry to bore you with it again. The 2 oldest justices on the Supreme Court are the most radically conservative, Alito and Thomas. They're both in their 70s. I am guessing from what I've read, they could be convinced to step down during a Trump presidency, and he picks a 42-year-old Clarence Thomas, a 43-year-old Thomas Alito. What's Alito's first name?
Samuel
Alito.
Yeah.
And they serve through 8 presidencies, for 40 years until they're in their 80s. So I hope people this time, regardless who the nominees are, decide that matters to them. What are you doing on your show?
We're doing an LGBTQ roundtable. We're looking at actually the Supreme Court's having accepted the Tennessee case. So they'll be making a decision on gender-affirming care for the states, which is a big deal. So I don't know, that's not looking good from where we sit right now. We're talking about the Parentage Act, which has passed the House unanimously and goes to the Senate. This is a law that has needed to be updated for 40 years to really outline who is a parent and put it in terms that make sense now with all of the new medical technologies that we have and the way that we create our families. And then Translatable, a new online community launched by Dwayne Wade, shaped by his daughter Zaya.
Oh, I know that, yeah.
And he's like, transgender kids are under attack everywhere. It's why we moved from Florida to California. We couldn't take it. And I want to have a space for families to communicate with each other because what's happening to them is very dangerous. So that, and then we're continuing with the online presentation of the Roxbury Film Fest with a film about black comedians featuring Alonzo Bowden, who, as some people may know from Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. Yeah, so.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
We'll be listening.
Okay.
Good to
Callie,
see you.
thank
We'll
you
see you
very
at 2
much.
o'clock on the Culture Show.
Yes.
We have been speaking with Callie Crossy, host of the Under the Radar broadcast, which you can catch. It's Under the Radar with Callie Crossy, which you can catch Sunday nights on 89.7 at 6 o'clock every week. You can also catch Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition, and hear her as co-host of GBH's Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 o'clock right after the news. And today it's going to be right here in the Boston Public Library for their Week in Review from the studio here. Callie, thanks a lot.
Let's go.
After a quick break, we're going to take more of your calls, 877-301-8970, your calls and texts on what you're thinking after last night's debate, 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, we'll have local reaction to last night's debate and what voters are thinking about President Biden's future. And we'll hear what today's Supreme Court rulings on January 6 defendants and homeless encampments mean for Massachusetts. Plus, migrants who have been sleeping at Logan Airport will soon be pushed out. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Rockland Trust Bank. Their team is dedicated to bringing the vision of your business to life, providing support and advice tailored to your specific goals. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, featuring a collection of over 700 artifacts. The exhibition is now open at the Castle at Park Plaza in Boston. Tickets and more at theauschwitzexhibition.com.
I'm Boston Public Radio producer Aidan Connolly, and you're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're off next week, except for the beginning of Monday, when Marjorie and I will discuss with you and Judge Gertner the decision finally handed down on Monday about presidential immunity, which obviously will be huge, to say the least. We're off the rest of next week. We return the following Monday, which is the 8th. And the 9th, we're back at the library with Ask the Mayor from 11 to noon. What we're going to do for the next few minutes until we're joined by Shirley Young, and then again at the end of the show, is take your calls and texts with your thoughts about last night, your thoughts about what has to happen next, what should happen next, what will happen next, any and everything about the debate and the state of the race for the presidency. 877-301-8970.
Well, we have some suggestions from texters about who should be the replacements. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama should take over the ticket, says Dave in Leicester. Bernie for president, Gavin Newsom for a Veep, says another texter. And a couple of people have put the two together. Wes Moore, who's the governor of Maryland. Is Veep, and Josh Shapiro, who's the governor of Pennsylvania, as the top of the ticket. So there you go. And one more text. This is from Peter in Manchester. He says, my head almost exploded last night, 15 minutes in. I had to leave in tears. Newsom would be a great substitute, but I prefer Biden in office, sleeping through another 4 years rather than Trump awake, tearing up our country.
Well, I would say, as I said to you and Callie for years, that if Joe Biden chooses to step down, obviously his call, Michelle Obama should run. In any case, Len Stowe, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hi, Len.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to be somewhat contrarian here.
Sure.
I'm not ready to throw Joe Biden under the bus. Mm-hmm. I mean, I heard the debate last night. I didn't see it, and I'm sure that what I didn't see was even worse than what I heard. I'm sure. But, you know, we do agree that Joe Biden has been a good president.
Yes.
The problem is the communication. And I think he needs better prep. And maybe what he needs to do is take a page from what happened with Ronald Reagan in his first debate. He was awful. He looked like a deer in the headlights. Yep. And people were wondering about his age and whether he was losing it. And for all we know, he might have been losing it because he did have dementia, eventually. But I think what Joe Biden could do in the next debate is say, look, I don't think mental instability should be a reason for removing a nominee of his party. So I don't think Donald Trump should be removed as the Republican nominee. I just want to defeat him in the election.
A variation on what Reagan said to Mondale about he won't let his youth and inexperience be an obstacle, which deflected the whole thing about age. Len, thanks for the call.
But that was a great call, but I got to disagree with Len because the one thing that has concerned voters more than anything else is Biden's age. So when he gets the question last night about his age, which he knew was coming.
That's a wonderful point.
He basically we talked about it like for about 3 seconds and then went on to list everything he'd done in his campaign. I mean, Ronald Reagan had one of the best rejoinders ever when Mondale asked him about his age. What did Reagan say? Something like, I am not going to let my age become an issue in this race. And said,
no, I won't let his youth and inexperience
become an issue in this race. Yeah, Mondale's youth and experience. So he had all week to think about and to be prepared for how he's going to answer that. And how he didn't answer that, it makes me think there's something bigger going on here.
Well, that's what I would have said to the caller. I don't think this is about preparation. I think there's a point in his life that it appears, based upon 90 minutes, it was not a one-question kind of thing, that this is maybe a bit much for him. And by the way, this is, I want to be clear, we've said it, Van Jones said it beautifully last night. We're both admirers of the work this guy has done. I'm a huge admirer of anybody, regardless of politics, who decides to commit his whole or her whole life to public service like Joe Biden does. As he said last night, I think he was the second youngest U.S. senator in history after a horrible nightmare with his family.
That's what you're referring to. He was one of the youngest people ever hold office, now one of the oldest people ever to hold office.
Which made no sense.
Which made no sense. And the other thing is that I think Biden realized early on, because fairly early, and Trump knew fairly early how things were going.
Last night, you mean?
Yes,
yeah,
and I wonder whether Biden's realizing, oh my God, this is not going well, just led to his stuttering coming back and his difficulty pronouncing words coming back, because you could see in Trump's expression, he said, I got this guy in my back pocket. And it was painful to watch.
Can I say one more thing to that last caller? Is give him a second chance, September. I am a strong believer. We discussed this with one of our guests earlier today. The notion that anybody believes that Donald Trump is going to show up for a second debate is ridiculous. He achieved everything that he could have ever dreamed of and more, including the fact that he lied for 90 minutes, and it's not even the second or third biggest story. Why would you go back on a stage and give your opponent a chance to rehabilitate himself? So I don't know this. I think that was likely the one and only debate in this election.
Here's a retired nurse from New Hampshire who votes Democratic 95% of the time. She said last night President Biden demonstrated he's physically and cognitively unfit. There is no other way to spin this performance. It is irresponsible for him, his team, and the leaders of the Democratic Party for him to continue in the race. Donald Trump's performance, while despicable, is not the issue.
877-301-8970, Marjorie.
Let's go to Charles in Boston. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Charles.
Hi. I got a call from about a month ago. You may remember I said that Joe Biden should get on the stage at the debate, address the public as follows. Folks, some of you have already made your mind up. You're not going to vote for me. Some of you have made your mind up that you are going to vote for me. For those who have not made the decision, here's my statement. I am not going to waste your time or my time on this debate talking to a liar, an insurrectionist, and one of the most ineffective presidents, and not only that, a person of low moral character. So therefore, I'm not going to waste any time. Get off the stage, and thank you very much for your time.
I remember the call, and Charles, I'm cutting you off only because your phone is horrible. We got it. Charles' position, if you couldn't understand, Biden takes the stage and basically says, I'm not going to waste time with this guy. Here's what I stand for. Here's what you should care about. And then he leaves. It's a nice idea, a fantasy. But again, remember, as a lot of people have said today, the person who asked for the debate early was Joe Biden, not Donald Trump. Joe Biden was the initiator of last night.
And the other thing that Biden did repeatedly is say the idea that he started the answers with the idea, then he'd do his number one, number two,
he always does that.
And number three, and sometimes we didn't get a number two or a number three,
or there were
we
two
got
number ones.
Two. I mean, so it was just like I said, very disconcerting. John in the car says 5 points. Number one, speaking of number one and number two, number one, communications about how you make people feel. Number two, Joe Biden made me feel hopeless. Number three, you can't fix old age. Number four, Joe Biden is too old. Number five, he needs to be replaced as soon as possible.
877-301-8970. If you weren't listening earlier, other than a vote by the convention where 95% of the delegates are committed to Biden, not legally, but factually, I guess you could say, other than a vote to take away the nomination, the only way there would be another nominee is if Joe Biden himself decides to step down between now and August 19th, which is the beginning of the Democratic convention.
Ron in Seabrook, New Hampshire. Thanks for calling, Ron.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, good morning, or
You too.
good afternoon.
Whatever it is.
Two things. I think that, however it might happen, a new candidate would constitute throwing in the towel. I think it would just split the vote up so much that Trump would be assured of a win. My question, however, is who determined that this was going to be a debate without fact-checking? If Trump had been stopped every time he opened his mouth by someone saying, no, that's not true, or no, that's a lie, we'd be having a completely different discussion.
Yeah, but Ron, can I just cut you off? Marty and I have done a ton of debates in Massachusetts. We have this discussion all the time. I think occasionally I do too much correction. It's the candidate's job. It is Joe Biden's primary job to refute that which he feels was factually inaccurate and that should matter to the voters. He wasn't able to do it last night. I agree with you that that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash could have done more, but as to who decided, the debate organization, CNN in this case, decided they would not do fact-checking, and they're taking a lot of heat for it. Ron, thanks for the call.
You know, several texters are citing Heather Cox Richardson, the great historian from Boston College, who's got the biggest newsletter on Substack, and she was apparently much more concerned with Trump's lies than with Biden's performance. She was much more empathetic, I guess we could put it that way.
Aren't you empathetic? I feel horrible.
Yeah, I think
this guy's given his whole life to this.
I think most people felt really sad and their heart was going out to Joe Biden because he knew it was a disaster, and it just got a little bit better, but never better enough. Okay, we're moving on.
We are.
Yes, we are. We're going to talk with...
more calls at the end of the show, though, right?
Yeah, we're going to take more calls at the end of the show, but we're going to talk with Shirley Leung from the Boston Globe, business columnist from the Boston Globe. Shirley's up next. We're going to talk with her briefly and then come back to your calls as well. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting from the Boston Public Library.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. A coalition of Boston theaters are producing a 2-year festival celebrating Mfaniso Udafia's 9-play cycle that follows 3 generations of a Nigerian-American family. And Sean Penn says in today's Hollywood, as a straight actor, he could never be cast as Harvey Milk. Plus, a museum skirts a gender discrimination suit by way of a ladies' restroom. We take on that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Newport Mansions, presenting an evening with actor Danae Benton and executive producer Erica Dunbar July 9th at Rosecliff. They'll discuss Peggy Scott, Benton's character on HBO's The Gilded Age. Tickets at newportmansions.org. And Native Plant Trust with Garden in the Woods in Framingham, a botanic garden showcasing the beauty of New England's native plants in a dramatic natural landscape. More information at nativeplanttrust.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you very much. We are off next week, except for Monday. We'll be here because the Supreme Court is finally going to release their decision about immunity regarding the former president, and we're going to talk about that. We'll be back here at the Boston Public Library on July 9th with another edition of Ask the Mayor with Mayor Michelle Wu. And meanwhile, we got a TikTok page at Boston Public Radio these days, and I'm kind of excited about it. Shows some great scenes of Jim stuffing food in his mouth, and we all enjoy that. Speaking of Jim, he's disappeared. We don't know where he's going or is gone, but Jared Bowen is stepping in. Jared Bowen, thank you very much.
We all get to see the slithering in real time.
That's
right out of here.
He slithered right out the door. It was shocking, shocking. But in any case, Shirley Young, Boston Globe Business Columns, is here with us at the Boston Public Library. She also hosts the great podcast, Say More with Shirley Young, and there are new episodes every Thursday. And I loved your ones on burnout. I learned so much. But getting back to the subject of the hour, Shirley Young, what did you think about last night?
So many things going through my head. So last night I was at an event, right? And so I hopped in my car, turned on the radio, started listening to the debate. This was probably, 9:15?
On the radio.
9:15, 9:20.
This is going to be key, actually.
Yeah.
But you didn't watch it.
At first I didn't watch it. And my first thought was, oh, he sounds old. What's up with that raspy voice? And then I got home and I turned on the TV and I didn't think he could feel older, sound older. He looked so much older.
I know.
It almost didn't even seem like the same president from the State of the Union.
Who smiled and joked and called out the Republicans. He hardly smiled last night.
Yes, it was horrible. So it was interesting. Like if everybody listened on the radio, you're like, oh, he sounds kind of old and raspy, and then you flipped on the TV and you're in shock. You know, between the sound and the picture, you're like, this can't be. I mean, I don't think he can. I think the Democrats really have to think about an alternative to Biden.
What do you think this means for you? Cover business. We see how much the economy, of course, is tied. It fluctuates anyway in election years, and we see what Wall Street does. What do you think the repercussions of this are?
I mean, I think in terms of the business community, I think, a lot of them don't like Trump. A lot of people don't like Biden. I think they're just trying to, keep their heads down and make money, no matter who's president at this point.
Yeah. So do you think I know you're a business person, but you know a lot about politics. We've been hearing for a long time that Democratic voters, have been upset with Joe Biden. They don't like Donald Trump, obviously, and so it's okay, we'll vote for Joe Biden because that's our choice. But they've been very, very unhappy with him, and that's why there's some growth, certainly among third-party candidates who could be very influential. RFK Jr. is polled surprisingly well to me. So do you think they can get their act together to do something? I mean, Joe Biden has to decide himself whether to leave.
Well, I think last night's, I think Democrats have been talking for a while, right, about whether, Biden should step aside. And I think last night, there was no doubt, or at least there was no doubt that he should probably step aside, or at least there should be a process to seriously look at whether he should step aside, I should say.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna get. Do you have a candidate?
I don't have a candidate.
No, I don't think so. We've had a lot of suggestions. Gavin Newsom, Pete Buttigieg, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, Wes Moore from Maryland. We've had a lot of people suggest. I kind of like Andy Beshear from Kentucky, but that might not be the most. I don't know how well Kentucky would do nationwide. You have to think about, of course, Newsom in California. That's the biggest state with the most votes and the most electoral college votes. So, and of course, he's very handsome. Not that should matter.
Another one is Adam Kinzinger. I keep talking about Adam Kinzinger.
You're a big fan.
Republican who said he would vote, because I spoke with him at Speaker Series, and I see the way he resonates with people, and I see the way that the audience loved him, and he's moderate, and he is, while acknowledging his more conservative standpoints, he also acknowledges the more liberal standpoints that he's also embraced, how he can bring them to middle of the road. Maybe there'll be more conversation about him going forward. At least it needs to start to surface this weekend.
I like Gretchen.
I like Gretchen too. I think
she has a book coming out. She has a memoir coming out soon.
Yeah, she's great. She stood up to those nuts that wanted to kidnap her and put her on trial and do terrible things to her. Okay, so let's move on to some of the stories we're going to talk to you about today that aren't having to do with last night's very sad evening. The Supreme Court has rejected this Purdue Pharma OxyContin settlement. Well, give us both sides, because I know some people were happy about this, and some people, including some of the survivors of the OxyContin disaster, or families who lost members of their family, are furious.
Yes, I mean, this case has been years in the making. I mean, I believe Massachusetts led the way in 2018.
Maura Healey was the Attorney General.
Right, filing that first lawsuit against the maker of OxyContin from the Sackler family, Purdue Pharma. And I actually didn't know it had gone all the way to the Supreme Court. I thought the settlement was a done deal.
And given lots of money to the survivors for their
billions of
and
dollars for across the country, including about $110 million to victims in Massachusetts. And I didn't realize that. I thought it was a settled deal, and turns out that the U.S. trustee and some other states had problems with using the bankruptcy court and to shield the Sackler family from future lawsuits, to give them immunity. And the Supreme Court, in a very 5-4 decision, it was a close decision, sided with the U.S. trustees and those who were upset with the structure of the deal. Now, I think some of the justices thought that this means everyone has to go back to square one, right? After many years of coming to this deal. And maybe there's a chance they might get a better deal out of it, because I think the Sacklers want to settle this too. I don't think they want to keep going.
I mean, that becomes a big question, because the Sacklers wanted it settled in a certain way, because they were able to establish a framework around this so that they could basically extract themselves from Purdue Pharma, but still be a family and still hold on to a lot of their money. They walked away from a lot of the Purdue money, but it didn't mean that people could go after them for their personal wealth, as far as I understand it.
Yes.
And this is where the outrage came as soon as the settlement came. I remember asking, I think I was filling in on this show actually, with then Attorney General Maura Healey, and having to ask her about that. And I think even she was slightly conflicted, because at the time she was she was celebrating the victory that they had just had, that she had been pursuing as one of the first attorneys general on this, but then recognizing that family members were upset that there wouldn't actually be a whole lot of financial accountability for the Sackler family.
Or ever any criminal responsibility, too. That was another one of the things that people were objecting to about this settlement. But
yeah, so now it goes back to square one. I mean, I'm just hoping that they'll come away with a deal that is as good as the last deal, in terms of giving some money to and some help to families. And it'll be very interesting how, I mean, it might take another 5 or 6 years to get this done.
So let's talk about this great story about the Mattapan restaurant. But before we get to the Mattapan restaurant, Durgan Park, which operated for years down at Faneuil Hall.
192 years.
Yeah. My best childhood friend, her grandfather owned it for about 40
Really?
Yeah, from
Oh,
like
wow.
the 60s and 70s and 80s when Faneuil Hall was kind of a dump before they really fixed Faneuil Hall up. We used to get these massive containers of ice cream down at her house down the Cape, and the red and white tablecloths, and her dad was a cook there like for 30 years. So I had very warm feelings about Durgan Park, and that makes me very happy that Durgan Park's liquor license, long after Jim Hallett passed away years and years ago, and her dad, Glenn King, that they could do something in absentia, I guess, for this Mattapan restaurant. So tell us.
Yeah, so I've been writing a whole series about liquor licenses in Boston, and I knew that there weren't many liquor licenses that landed in Mattapan, but I found out there was one restaurant in Mattapan that has a liquor license, and I was thinking, I wonder who that is, and I wonder what's the backstory of how this restaurant got its license. And the restaurant's called Mellow Vibes. It's a Jamaican restaurant.
Sounds great.
It's been around 3 years. It's tiny. It's 26 seats, and I actually drive past it all the time, because I live in Milton, and Mattapan's on the right on the border of Milton. And turns out I drive by this restaurant all the time and didn't even know it was there. And I walked in and I talked to the owner. I said, how did you get your license? And she's like, well, I applied for one, and I couldn't afford to buy one from another restaurant, because there's such a scarcity of licenses that if you want a new liquor license, your own liquor license, you have to buy it on this kind of private market, and it's $600,000. And the alternative is you just wait for a license to show up at the licensing board, and they turn around and give it to someone who's been approved. And so she went through this process of getting approved, and she got a license. And then I said, well, do you know where your license came from, where the free license you got from the city? She's like, I have no idea. So then I start on the path figuring out where this license came from, and it turns out it came from Durgan Park.
Yeah.
Durgan closed in 2019. It's since owned by like a New York firm, years ago. And there was a bit of confusion on who owned Durgan Park's license. I mean, it's been around for 192 years.
Long time.
A long time. And so when Arc Restaurants, which owned Durgan Park at the time, went to dispose the license and clear up do all the paperwork, they realized we don't own the license. Actually, the Faneuil Hall owns the license, or the management company that runs Faneuil Hall. And so they kept on telling Faneuil Hall, it's a group called Ashkenazi. I said, you guys own the license, not us. And Ashkenazi said, no, we don't own the license, you do. And so in the confusion, no license got renewed. And so that's how it got turned into the city, and that's how this Mattapan restaurant got to serve cocktails and grow its business.
So it's this great magic thing that happens, because I know restaurateurs who, it's so expensive in this city, and because they're so exclusive that it's almost unheard of that this would happen, that it just magically appears. How much is it transforming the restaurant to have a full-fledged liquor license?
So for her, I mean, usually you get a restricted license, which doesn't have a value, and once you're done with it, it gets turned back into the city. But she has a full value license, which means she can now move to anywhere in the city, right? And this, because it's worth $600,000, it's collateral. She could use it as a loan to expand, to renovate. And my hope in the story is that she doesn't move from Mattapan. She grew up in Mattapan, lives in Mattapan, and so and she's actually been looking to expand, but now she wants to stay in Mattapan. She's going to try to stay there and expand her business there.
Well, as you pointed out too, poor Mattapan. I mean, how many restaurants have liquor licenses in Mattapan? It's
just one.
One. I mean, isn't that insane?
And this was despite efforts to even that out across the city, so that they all weren't concentrated, frankly, around where we are right now at the Boston Public Library. Back Bay, the hotspots, the Seaport, the South End.
Yeah, and when you walk around Blue Hill Ave, the main thoroughfare down there are a lot of restaurants there, but they're takeout joints, like pizza or like burger places, and there are not enough sit-down restaurants. And I was struck by that. And so, but there's a new bill, liquor license bill, before the legislature right now, a proposal to create 200 new licenses, including quite a few in Mattapan. So hopefully that will pass by the end of July, and more restaurants in Mattapan will get a license.
We're talking to Shirley Young. She's a business columnist for the Boston Globe. It's too bad Jim isn't here for this, because he has a Tesla, as we know. And
I love that.
Yeah, and that, of course, is an electric car. Apparently, there's some dissatisfaction, mainly around the chargers with the EVs.
Yes, I was surprised by that, because I'm a recent EV owner myself.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Actually, I should say I lease an EV. I lease the Ioniq, the Hyundai Ioniq.
Oh, my son-in-law's got one of those
Yes.
too. I love it.
I love it.
Looks like a little spaceship.
Yes, exactly. I've had it for 2 months. I lease it. I love it. And I was a little surprised that I think it was like half the owners who have EVs say their next car will go back to a gas car.
Yeah.
And though that actually, my cousin did the same thing. He had a Tesla, and now and then ended up trading it in and getting a regular gas-powered car. But then it made me wonder, maybe most of the EVs are Tesla. Maybe it's unhappy Tesla drivers.
Could be. Although they have the best chargers.
They do. I mean, I was a little struck by this. I mean, of course, I've only had my car for 2 months, but I love it. I mean, I live in a single-family home, and I was able to install a charger. So charging is pretty easy. Next week, we're going to the Berkshires to see James Taylor.
Oh, for 4th of July.
4th of July.
Oh, what fun.
For Tanglewood. And it's our first road trip with the EV, and it is a little nerve-wracking. When you have to go long distances, we have to figure out where exactly we're going to have to charge the car.
Yeah.
And so, but I love it. It's a great ride. I love the fact that I can charge. I don't have to go to a gas station to power up my car. I can just do it at home anytime.
No, I've driven around in that car too. I really love it. And when you see them go up the street when they're leaving, this is my daughter, son-in-law, and my little grandchildren. When they drive away, it's like silently they disappear up the street, go off into the night with no noise whatsoever.
It is.
It's a really good-looking car.
It's a good car. It's a fun car. It's a fun car to drive. So I hope more people stick with it. It is better for the environment, and. I think come next year, it'll be a little bit easier for non-Tesla drivers like me to use. I think I can use Tesla chargers as well. So,
can you? I didn't
starting
know
next
that.
year, I think there's like a converter.
Well, that's going to make it. That's going to be because they're much faster.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I can use all. Right, I can use any the Tesla chargers. Chargers are really quite fast, and anyways, I haven't had a problem.
So 20 minutes.
In 30 minutes, 30 minutes, I can charge half the car.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask about the winters too, because I know that has been a huge concern with people buying these cars, and then especially if you're in the Midwest or something where it gets really cold. Feels like we don't have much of a winter here anymore, where it doesn't get that cold. But the batteries are dying, and that was a
don't tell me that.
But no, sadly, it doesn't happen here anymore.
Don't tell me that.
But that was a huge source of frustration too. But I didn't see that come up as I was reading the comments among people who are going back to gas engines.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is that people, like you say, are freaked out about if they go on a trip.
Yes.
Plotting out where they're gonna charge the car. But anyway, I want to get an electric car too. I've got a hybrid now, but I've paid for it, so I want to. It's nice not to have a car payment for a while, so I'm going to wait. But
what kind of hybrid? Oh, you have the Toyota Prius. You have the Prius?
No, I have the because it's a little bit too small for me. I have the RAV4.
Oh, you have the RAV4 hybrid.
Yeah,
Oh, that's great.
And before that, I had
those are hard to get.
Before that, I had a big, huge Highlander hybrid.
Oh, wow.
And everybody always says, "Oh, you have to get the batteries." Well, I had the Highlander for about 13 years. The battery never went. And,
oh, wow.
And it's not going on this
You're an
car.
early adopter.
I was an early adopter, that's right. I was trying to do my little part, such as it is. But something, we're not going to have to worry about the environment anymore, because the rate we're going with this debate last night, Donald Trump's going to win, and then it's all over. Just
it is not
kiss
all
the environment
over.
Goodbye. Okay, you have done a 3-part podcast, Say More, about burnout, from which I learned tremendous amounts. A lot of it was Cal Newport talking about how bad social media is and our phones are for us. So give us the overview of what you talked about.
So it ended up being a 4-part burnout series, and we actually have one bonus episode coming out as well. And so
so I have one more to listen to.
Yeah, one more
I'm
to
very
listen
excited
to.
because I'm burned out.
It's Friday.
That's right.
I think my biggest takeaway is I used to pride myself on multitasking, being able to do 3 loads of laundry, before 8 o'clock and before I'm starting writing my column. And maybe I'm when I'm working from home, I'm also putting away the dishes. And now I realize that the task switching, it's fogging up my mind. I need to kind of clear my head, focus on one thing, and not do too many things. And I think I can do my best work that way. And I could be faster and better if I just focus on one thing at a time. I never thought I would say that to myself, but I think after years of doing that, it's just too much.
We have more energy to do that too. I feel like I read maybe it was even through you, that a very small, single-digit percentage of the population
2%
can actually multitask.
Yes.
We all think we can do it. Most likely we can.
We
and then
can.
you realize it's like the spinning wheel of death on your computer. You realize how much energy you're using, and just like your computer, your brain can't spin after a while either.
Exactly. And so now, like laundry, I only do laundry Wednesday and the weekend, and that's it.
Oh.
And I don't, because it's just even think about the brain cells you have to use about planning the laundry, folding the laundry. I was like, no, I make a point not to do it only Wednesdays I can touch laundry. And only once during the day, not the whole day, just one period.
You know what the other thing that I really enjoyed that he talked about is if you're trying to work and concentrate, put your cell phone in a different room.
Yes, I do that too.
And then he said, try going to the grocery store or maybe CVS or Walgreens, wherever you go, without your phone.
Yes.
And I thought, my God, that's a revolutionary thought. Suppose someone's trying to call me. And it's becoming increasingly annoying to me that if I miss someone's phone call or someone's text for a half an hour, they're mad at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how does it come to this?
Or they think you're dead in a ditch.
They think
It's
you're
amazing
dead in a
the
ditch.
dark places people go to when you don't respond with an
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yes. I was at CVS.
Yeah, exactly.
And I forgot my phone.
But we all do that, don't we?
Right,
do you ever leave your
right.
house anymore without your phone?
No, we don't.
No.
And so I've learned kind of through this whole process kind of the downsides of technology, the downsides of constantly being tethered, and that it's actually healthy to separate myself from phones, from social media, and the laundry.
Okay. So what's part 4?
Oh, you're gonna love this.
Oh,
Or
good.
actually, part 5, I guess.
Part 5.
Part 5 is the No Club.
The No Club?
Ooh.
Oh.
So there are 4 women, economists, in Pennsylvania. I think Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh. A few years ago, they were working women, overwhelmed, heavy academic loads, full family life, and they were just had enough. And so they all started meeting. Once a month, having wine at the restaurant, the big restaurant, one of the well-known restaurants in Pittsburgh, and to figure out how can we do less? How can we start to say no? And why is it women? Why do women tend to say couple and then we feel burnt out and overloaded? So then they end up writing a book. And a couple years ago, and they're hoping to spark a movement to kind of show women and teach women how to say no to tasks at work that they don't need to do.
Or in your life.
Or in your life, exactly.
Do you say no?
I don't say no enough.
Yeah.
And so this is the thing I learned from them was so great. They said women tend to take on what they call non-promotable tasks.
That's right.
At work. And so it's the mentoring, right?
Or cleaning the office refrigerator.
Cleaning the office or organizing the retirement parties
That's
for
right.
colleagues.
That's
it
right.
always goes to women. And you'll never get promoted on that. Whereas the men, they use all that time to work on projects that will create revenue or build audience for the company, and then they get promoted and they get promoted, they get more money and the bigger bonuses as a result.
We have to talk about that. That's a great talker. Jared, you're not doing your part.
I realize I don't know how to say no either, but that's you both did on this show. They did a talker not too long ago about saying no, and I remember doing the crossover that we do in between the culture show and this, and I marched and I said, I know how to say no now, and then I held myself accountable, and I realized I was a big liar that day. I don't know. I'm standing here right now. I have a show in 23 minutes, and I'm doing your show.
Yeah, you couldn't say no to filling in for Jim.
Yeah.
That's right. Who could? She's just irresistible. Shirley Leung, thank you very much. And thank you for the great podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I love your podcast. Thank you.
We've been speaking with the Boston Globe's business columnist, Shirley Leung. She joins us weekly. Thank you again. After a quick break, we're opening up the phone and text lines, continuing to get your reactions to the debate last night. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim has mysteriously disappeared. Thank God. Jared Bowen stepped into the breach. We are off next week on vacation. The whole staff is, but we're going to be back here on Monday because the Supreme Court, better late than never, has waited to the last possible moment to release the decision about whether or not President Trump or former President Trump has claims to immunity for some of the nefarious deeds he did while he was in office. We're going to be back for that, but otherwise we're going to be gone. However, we'll be back here on July 9th with another edition of Ask the Mayor. And if you check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio, I think you get a kick out of that. Meanwhile, our number is 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. I hate to bring you down, but it is the big story of the day. We're still taking your thoughts on how you're feeling about the election post last night's debate. Jared, I've been looking at the text messages. There are some people who think that we're being premature here, that we're getting hysterical, that we should hang on and not pull the rug out from under President Joe Biden even after last night's performance. But that is the debate. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about how he did? Should he stay? Should he go? How worried are you about Donald Trump? Now, what is your impression of the debate? We didn't get a chance to talk to you about this.
With all due respect to the texters, I don't think there's opportunity to take some to take a beat and to take time off and think about this, or to think you're being premature. What we saw last night is our first unfiltered access to the president for an hour and a half, the most access we've had to him, the most unfiltered access we've had to him in a really long time, and we saw somebody who has aged considerably. This is what happens when you're in your 80s. We all know loved ones, and we all know what happens at this point in life. So I think we have to acknowledge this. He had great points. He had strengths. He had grasp of the facts. He had grasp of numbers. There are other numbers and facts that he didn't have a grasp on. We saw him run away at the end of his sentences and completely dissolve. We saw the way that Donald Trump was able to capitalize on that in certain moments. Other people are saying, you're talking about this and you're giving more time and you're giving more credence to Donald Trump. This is not what this is about. This is about leadership. We're also talking about somebody who's going to be the president for the next 4 years. So if we saw him at this stage of the game last night, even if he was having a bad night, we have a prism into what the next 4 years are going to be like. So this is time for the Democratic Party to take a very bold, radical, innovative look at itself, because these are the moments that will ultimately define history. And you can't help but think of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and what happened when she stayed on the Supreme Court and what the consequences were there. So I think that needs to be borne out as they think about what to do next.
We're going to try to get to as many calls and texts as we can before the top of the hour, but before that, I want to play a little sound of the debate last night. This was Donald Trump responding directly to President Biden's stumbling. Here it is. I think Trump attacking Biden.
It's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
And you know, that was a cruel thing to say, but I think Trump, of whom I am not fond, reflected what a lot of people listening last night thought. I wasn't sure what he was saying, and I'm not sure the president was sure what he was saying, which was very sad and painful to watch. Bernard from Southborough, what do you think?
Yes, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm 82 years old, so I won't be accused of ageism. And I live in San Francisco, actually. I'm visiting my daughter back here in Boxborough. And I was shocked last night at the deterioration that Biden demonstrated from the time of the State of the Union address to last night. It was a totally different person. And the problem is that this condition is not going to get better for him. It's going to only get worse as time goes by. So I think it really is time for the Democrats to sit down and have a heart-to-heart with Joe and basically get him to release his delegates so they can have an open convention, which is something that would be, I think, very challenging, but also offer a lot of opportunity to have a candidate who would basically take on Donald Trump, like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who has already demonstrated that he can handle the Donald quite easily.
Bernard, thank you very much for the call. I mean, we talked about this earlier, Jared. People age at different rates.
Yes.
I mean, Bernie Sanders sounds great. I think he's 82. Doris Kearns Goodwin, a brilliant woman. We had talked to her yesterday for a half an hour. She's 81.
Jane Fonda, mid-80s.
Mid-80s.
Huge grasp of the facts.
And we may know people in our own lives. I certainly do. People that are totally with it into their 90s. I mean, people age differently. But something has happened to Joe Biden. I don't know what it is. But clearly...
Well, another thing that I think happened was the time of night. It was 9 o'clock. He just had a rally that CNN is playing right behind you on the monitor, Marjorie, and he looks more energetic. Granted, it's not the stifling debate forum, which clearly nerves were an issue too, but he looked more energetic. But we're talking about being in the middle of the afternoon. You also have to realize, I was thinking about this driving to work, that what happens if something happens in the middle of the night and you have a president who can't acquit himself well at that hour? Again, this is not about ageism, because we all know people we love who are that age, but we saw it unfold before us last night.
Yeah.
And it all needs to be taken into consideration. And I think, not unlike what our last caller was just saying, although I have a little bit more conviction, I think a lot can happen between now and Election Day. I think there is opportunity, especially in this age of social media and being able to reach so many people, that you can galvanize a people, you can launch a candidacy. A lot more things are possible in this age that weren't before.
Cheryl in Boston text. Oh, by the way, we saw the Rolling Stones a couple of weeks ago. I think I mentioned to you.
Yes.
Mick Jagger is 80. I believe, if he's not, he's close to, I think he is actually 80, to show how people age differently. He danced for 2 hours. Yeah. I don't know what he's doing, what he's taking. He's done a few drugs in his day, but somehow he manages to bop around the stage for 2 hours and he's not lost his voice. So it's not necessarily the age, it is how people are operating at that age. Cheryl in Boston texts, another bad optic was that no one mentioned the visual at the end of Jill Biden having to help Joe Biden walk off the stage while Trump independently walked off by himself. Of course, that was because Melania wasn't there to walk off with him. We haven't seen her in weeks.
This is true.
Yeah.
Should we go to Kathy in Lexington? Hi, Kathy.
Hello. I'm calling because the one thing that I'm thinking about is that we haven't seen the president, but he's been exposed in court when his son went to court. And I think that was a huge emotional hit for him. And people can really age from having something like happen to them in their life. And that's all I have to say.
Yep. I mean, Kathy, that's a great point. Yep. I've heard people say that when they followed the trial of Hunter Biden, people probably know he was convicted in gun charges, lying on a form saying he wasn't a drug addict when he'd been struggling to overcome his drug addiction. He was sober for a period of time there, but it's not clear if, I think, as they say in AA, you're an alcoholic for life, right? You're in recovery, but you're an alcoholic. So, but some people have questioned why Biden even ran again this time, or ran at all this time in 2020 because of the problems in his life. He's lost a daughter, he lost his first wife, he lost his son Beau from brain cancer, and then he went through this with his son Hunter. It's really horrible.
We have other texters who are saying it's interesting that after weeks of being in the courtroom in Manhattan, that didn't seem to age Donald Trump.
No, he's like a walking advertisement for cheeseburgers. We should all eat as many cheeseburgers as he does, and he seems to just go right on, no problem. He doesn't drink.
Everybody has a different health regimen.
Yep. He drinks about 12 or 14 Diet Cokes a day, I guess, but I tell you, he does look, and he came out of the stage last night looking like a bull going into the ring with the gladiator. He had that scowl on his face. He came charging out. He does look aggressive. I'll give that to him, right?
He looked very, very confident when he walked out.
He did. John from Gardner, thank you for calling. Hi, John.
Hi, Marjorie. Thank you. How are you, Jared?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. Marjorie, I need to know one thing before I proceed.
What's that?
Is Jim throwing his hat into the ring?
Well, that may be why he left. He did run for governor. People may not know that. Jim Brady ran for governor. He's out campaigning.
Getting the signs printed.
I think his campaign for governor only lasted about a week.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, he did. He did. Well, it was kind of an under the radar kind of run. You know what I mean? A lot of people didn't know, but it didn't go well, John. But in any case, he may be trying again. But what did you think of last night? Oh, is John there? Oh, we seem to have missed John. Okay, John's gone. We're going back to Lisa in Cambridge. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, I'm astounded to get through. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for calling.
I also thought this was a terrible disaster last night, and I actually sent you guys an email because I don't have texting, and I was sure I wouldn't get through on the phone. But I'm struck, I have these memories that Marjorie will remember and Jared won't, of Ted Kennedy's disastrous run for president in 1980.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
He had so many horrible, unresolved things in his life, and when he tried to say why he should be president, he totally fell apart. He couldn't speak. And then he went on to be a great senator for the rest of his life. And I was thinking that Joe Biden, I believe he's still able to amazingly execute the toughest job in the world and be a good president. But he can't. He's hit a wall. He shows he's hit a wall where he can't combine that with the bizarre energy it takes to also have a campaign. And that if he could step down and we could come up with a younger, decent candidate, not only could that candidate stand well against Trump, but he could also make a better case for Biden than Biden makes for himself. And the country could see the good job that Biden is doing and feel more healed and together on what's happening and what's real and what's true and go forward. That's my thought.
I agree with you, Lisa. If you have a young person who can go out and barnstorm the country, hit everywhere. I was talking about social media before. You can get certainly everywhere and immediately there. But if you chart out a plan, and there's still plenty of time to do that between now, going through the convention, and into the general election, barnstorm the country, demonstrate your youth, carry those ideas, there's time for that.
Yeah, so do you have a candidate in mind?
I have the whole list that everybody else has.
Okay, the whole list
Although
everybody
the
else
one
does.
everybody isn't talking about is Adam Kinzinger, but I think Gina Raimondo, too.
Oh, I
Pete
love
Buttigieg,
Gina
Wes
Raimondo,
Moore. Yeah.
but she, I don't know, she's so unknown, you know, but she is such an impressive woman. Was she on 60 Minutes? She was on some show I saw.
It was 60 Minutes
60
recently,
Minutes.
yeah.
She was great. People may not know she was the governor of Rhode Island. She took a big hit in Rhode Island because she reorganized the pension system down there, and a lot of the public employee unions got really mad at her. They were going broke. That's why they did it. But she has been great in the CHIPS Act.
Yeah, she's the architect behind
She's the
bringing that back to the United States.
Yes, she is, and that's made a lot of jobs for a lot of people in places like the Midwest and the so-called flyover places that we tend to ignore. You know, Megan from Rhode Island, speaking of Rhode Island, says the new cover of The Onion has on the cover a horrible debate, but I'll still vote for the feeble guy over the felon and the sex offender. I haven't seen The Onion. It's a humor magazine, so I don't know if they really did that. Some texters are saying the same thing, that as bad as Biden was, they're not ready to move on. They will never move on.
Well,
to
I can
Donald
understand
Trump.
having your head in the sand for the first 24 hours. I was kind of shocked when I arrived here in the studio today to realize that nobody within the Democratic, well, hardly anybody in the Democratic Party here in Massachusetts was returning your calls to be on the air today, with exception, some notable exceptions. But there's only 24 hours to keep your head in the sand before you've got to look up and start to have a plan forward.
Our number is 877-301-8970. That's the number to call or text. Here's a text that says, I always thought Biden would be a one-term president, so did I, because he said he was going to be the transitional president. Here's a texter. That he would do a lot of good things and then step aside. But 2 summers ago, when Jamie Raskin, the congressman, gave a talk in Wellfleet, the subject came up. Raskin said Biden would run again, and people gasped in disbelief, but he insisted, yes, Biden was going to run. It seemed ridiculous to me then, even more ridiculous now after Biden's performance last night. Count me among the Democrats who are mad at Biden for staying too long at the party.
How about you, Suzanne? We have Suzanne on the line from Newton. How do you think the president did last night and his opportunity going forward is?
Well, I felt really angry. I couldn't help but screaming at Trump, listening to his lies and everything that he misconstrued. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen until I had nightmares last night. And this morning, the first thing I did was write out a check to support Joe Biden and walk a mile to the box and mailed it, because he's been a great president. And he's an 80 whatever old man, but he's a wise man, and he's gotten a lot done. And he had a bad night. He's not a player. He's not a man.
Susan, I'm interrupting you only because you're cutting in and out. We have a bad connection. I apologize, but I think we've gotten the gist of what you were calling about. And by the way, speaking of much stronger, our staff got a clip of President Biden at a rally just now in North Carolina when he does indeed sound a lot stronger, talking about Donald Trump before the crowd. Here he is.
When I thought about his 34 felony convictions, his sexual assault on a woman in a public place, his being fined $400 million for business fraud, I thought to myself, Donald Trump isn't just a convicted felon. Donald Trump is a one-man crime wave.
He doesn't sound like a man who wants to step aside, does he?
No. And it sounds like a completely different person from the one we saw, 12 hours ago?
You know, I've said this before, but I think we need some explanations. I would like to know why the president has difficulty walking, if it's arthritis, whatever it is, or why he had difficulty speaking last night. His voice has changed dramatically. What's that about?
Well, I was thinking, why didn't they disclose the cold beforehand? Of course, there is a liability in that, too, because then you're trying to set yourself up for people to have low expectations or already come in with suspicions, but that disclosure comes halfway through. It just doesn't also completely ring true.
No, it sounded like they knew he was in trouble and they made an excuse. But I, for one, would feel better if I knew what was happening. That would, because people get arthritis, people get throat conditions, people get whatever they got. Maybe he was hoarse from over rehearsing. Bill Clinton,
which is what I thought, yeah.
Bill Clinton, as I said before, was hoarse all the time. You know, and he was in his 40s. So he could have explained that, or they could have explained that for him, but they didn't. Victoria in Falmouth, thank you for calling.
Hi, Victoria.
Hey.
Hi.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah. So I'm only 30, but I watched the debate last night, and I think that Joe Biden can't represent the interests of the country because by the time any of his policies are going to be going into effect, he's going to be gone. And I think he reminded us of that last night. And I think that we deserve somebody younger who has a stake in the future of this country.
I missed the last part of that, but you say that last part again, Victoria? Are you sticking with him as the bottom line?
I think we deserve somebody with a stake in the future of this country, and I don't think that he's the one for it.
Victoria, thank you very much for the call. You see what this anonymous texter voted? It just said, I'm still voting for Biden. I'm not telling anybody, though. You know, did you hear our discussion earlier at the golf game? This is one of the big back and forth. You know, Biden claimed he had a 6 handicap, used to have an 8 handicap, now he's down to a 6. Trump saying, I've watched Biden swing, he's got a lousy swing, he can't get anywhere. They're going to challenge each other to a golf match. I mean, my goodness.
You're sitting there thinking this is one of 2 debates. And do we even think there'll be another debate? Very doubtful.
Very doubtful.
But this is one of 2 debates, and this is where it ends up. You're talking about your golf games.
Yeah, that's right. We can squeeze in one more call. O'Connor from Fall River. Hi.
Hi, O'Connor.
I don't know if O'Connor's your first name or your last name, but anyway, thank you for calling.
Yes, it's my last name. William O'Connor is the first name.
Okay. Hi, William.
Yes. So, my thoughts, I'm a physician that deals with speech pathology in people, ear, nose, and throat physician, and I think people are not understanding enough of the stuttering problem that Biden has had since he was born. And it has always been a matter of hesitation to get things out and to get the speech forward. So I don't think he should be judged on one night of a poor performance, but on 3.5 years of very good work.
William, thank you very much for the call. That is absolutely true. The president does have a stutter, and you could hear that struggle last night to put things together. It was more the thinking process of what he was putting together.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, switching themes in mid-conversation, mid-sentence even, and not being able to resolve some of your ideas, that's what's concerning as well.
Yeah, that's what is concerning to me as well. Okay, Jared Bowen, thank you for coming in. Thank you for filling in on the disappearing Jim Browdy. It hadn't occurred to me he's going out to start his campaign for president. But
I thought I saw David Axelrod getting into his Tesla with him. That would explain a lot.
Yeah.
With felony obstruction of an official proceeding, basically obstructing Congress's certification of the Electoral College vote. Now, that law was passed after an accounting scandal at the company Enron about 2 decades ago, and the Supreme Court said in a 6-3 ruling that the law applied to obstruction by destroying documents and other records, not disrupting a proceeding of Congress. Close to 200 January 6 defendants have been convicted of this crime, and dozens are awaiting trial on this charge. And many of those defendants are now expected to challenge how prosecutors used this charge in their cases. Tom Dreisbach, NPR News.
Candidates running for a seat in the French Parliament have a closing window to campaign ahead of Sunday's first round vote. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports French election law mandates a 24-hour campaign news blackout period ahead of voting.
All campaigning and political programming stops at midnight Friday. Polls open Sunday morning. The politics free time is meant to give voters the space to reflect on their choice without outside influence. Polls currently put the far right in the lead, followed by the left-wing coalition. President Emmanuel Macron's centrist party is in third place. The top vote-getters Sunday will run off in a second and final round July 7th. Many Macron voters are still perplexed and even angry over his dissolution of Parliament and calling of a snap election. They say the gamble was too big. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Migrants who've been sleeping at Logan Airport will no longer be allowed there. That's according to a new policy announced by Governor Maura Healey today. As GBH's Sarah Bentoncourt reports, the move will take effect early next month.
Healey's office tells GBH News that migrants who've been staying at Logan will be offered transfers to new accommodations. That includes a shelter in Norfolk at the site of a former state prison that opened this week. The administration says the Logan decision was made with the new shelter in mind. Earlier this week, officials with the governor's office went to the southern border to make the point that Massachusetts is out of shelter space. Nonprofit staff who are on site at Logan will work with migrant families to inform them of the new policy and their options going forward. Sarah Betancourt, GBH News, 89.7.
The Board of Trustees at Amherst College has rejected appeals from students to divest of all investments in military equipment makers who do business with Israel. The Daily Hampshire Gazette reports that campus protesters have been calling for the divestment since the war in Gaza began on October 7. The board said its decision was unanimous, and the carefully considered decision was based on the need to maintain fiscal health at the school. It also added that taking steps to divest would lead to a slippery slope where the college is forced to respond to world events. Red Sox open a series with the Padres tonight at Fenway. Should be a beautiful night in the ballpark. Mostly sunny, upper 70s today. We are at 76 right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates, all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR.
It was 50 years ago.
Busing will never work in this city. Never.
Boston was forced to desegregate its schools.
When I reported on opening day that no black child had been killed, we thought that was a victory. It was the saddest day in Boston's history.
What followed had a lingering impact on the city.
I don't want to bus my child to any school.
Watch American Experience, the busing battleground.
I want to have a good school in my community.
Stream on demand on GBH's Passport app.
Welcome to the Culture Show live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen, joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and James Bennett II. It's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Here's what it sounded like.
The American Repertory Theater is building a new home at Harvard University.
Here we go. Boston's UFOT cycle. Here it comes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You must come out. Come out to your parents. Come out to your friends, if indeed they are your friends. Once and for all, let's break down the myths and destroy the lies and distortion.
The Museum of Modern Art quickly realized how successful art was at engaging visitors with cognitive loss.
A mysterious monolith that recently appeared in the mountains outside Las Vegas has now been removed. No one seems to know who put up the mirrored column, which stood about 6'4", or why they did it. Dozens of mysterious monoliths have popped up around the world in recent years.
Tasmania's Museum of Old and New Art has overcome a discrimination complaint by hanging Picasso artworks in a women's toilet.
Will Smith will take the stage, and he is to perform a new song at the 2024 BET Awards this weekend.
For the announcement of Boston's UFOT Family Cycle, local theaters and arts organizations will be converging in a celebration of the plays by Amfasino Udafia by way of a 2-year festival. Sean Penn feels penned in by his estimation, not being able to play gay roles amid philosophical changes in Hollywood. Then a Dutch museum program designed for people with dementia puts the heart in art by emphasizing emotional response. Plus, that shiny new object, we look into the mysterious metal monoliths materializing across the globe. And finally, it's Follow-Up Friday, which includes an update on a gender-denying museum exhibition. But let's start with two big announcements in theater companies here. We'll start with the first in Cambridge, about to become Boston news, or I guess it is Boston news at this point, because the American Repertory Theater, which has been had its longtime home in Boston, has broken ground on a new theater here in Allston, and this is a campus essentially that will completely change the notion of what it means to be a theater. So the American Repertory Theater will open this sprawling complex, 80,000 square feet, to open in late 2026, shows there in 2027, 2 stages, an outdoor space, and a lot of interior space for people any time of the day who want to use it whenever they'd like.
It's really something. One of the points of all of this, of course, is they practically need more space and need some adjustments to both access issues, just bathrooms. It's always been a challenge if you've ever been there for
because they're only downstairs.
That's right, and if you're trying to do a few things during the intermission, it becomes challenging. And also, it has the outdoor space and the indoor space are set up so that the new space I'm talking about now are set up so that there will be a real communal experience, just ongoing. As you said, people can drop in anytime in between theater performances. So that'll be very interesting. I love the idea of the west stage and a smaller east stage, which I assume will be sort of where the plays that were in the Oberon, which was a part of this ART, may be featured. I don't know, but we'll see. But anyway, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, what stuck out to me was that there's a dedicated practice facility in this new Alston space, and I don't think I knew that there wasn't one over in Cambridge. And I've never acted in any kind of acting role, save for a musical.
You haven't?
No, you can't tell. I was in a musical once about Jonah and the Whale in 8th grade, but I digress. But I can only imagine how much that can impact a performance positively. I was a band kid, and I remember in high school we rehearsed in a literal garage, for band practice, and then we had to go to the community college to actually do, recitals and concerts and the like. And just psychologically, being able to feel at home in your own space, to kind of have that channel that goes from here's where I've been workshopping and crafting, and now I'm actually performing. I think it would be fantastic to be able to work where you practice.
And my understanding is that, yes, Callie, the two stages, one would be the traditional performance stage where you would see a big, huge show like Gatsby, which is on stage at the American Repertory Theater right now, which is likely Broadway bound, so it's big and splashy. That'll have its own home within the theater. And then, yes, the smaller space will be like Oberon, where you could have more unconventional theater like Donkey Show, which was a disco take on Midsummer Night's Dream. But we'll also see, I think, a changing notion of what theater is supposed to be. And I think ultimately, as the Huntington finishes its renovation with the building next door and has more interior space, they're looking at this being more than just a space that you spend time between 8 and 10:30 when you go to see a show, or if you're going to see a matinee, that rather this is a gathering space for community with bathrooms, with food and beverage, with Wi-Fi. They want people to be able to experience free Wi-Fi and free performances in the yard. Yeah. There'll be some paid performances there too. But this is becoming an almost 24-hour destination rather than just a place you stop in and out. Just like I think we're seeing this with museums now too, reevaluating what it means to be these once vaunted and inaccessible spaces no longer.
I think it's also important to note that they got a huge gift to be able to do
this. Like $100 million
Yes,
gift.
Because we've talked a lot on this show about how difficult it is for theater companies just to maintain, let alone try to expand in some ways physically, because it's just so expensive. So that needs not to go unnoticed.
Yeah, and something that I hadn't even thought about, with respect to the public access kind of component of the space, is that when you have venues like this that are attached to larger institutions, in this case it's been long affiliated with Harvard, it feels sometimes as a theater goer or concert goer or whatever have you, that you are a visitor in that space. I'm a guest of this institution versus, this is where I'm going to enjoy and consume art publicly with fellow residents. I belong here. This is part of my community.
Well, as promised, there are two big theater initiatives that we've been talking about. The second one is at the Huntington. So Boston's UFOT Family Cycle. This is the Huntington Theater, along with an extensive list of fellow arts organizations and collaborators announced from Boston City Hall this week. They are staging a 2-year festival producing Emfaniso Udafia's 9-play cycle. And this is very exciting for us because she is a Southbridge, Massachusetts resident who went to what,
Wellesley College, the #1 premier college for women in the world. But continue.
Says one alum about another's institution.
And there's another right here.
Exactly, our producer, Molly McCall. And so what we will find is launching this fall with a production by the Huntington. They're going to do all the plays in her 9-play cycle. This is the first time that this will be done. This will be the first time that we experience some of these plays because they are world premieres. And something that I have wanted to see for a long time is happening, where you have so many different organizations. Full disclosure, GBH is one of those organizations. I may have had something to do with that. We'll be doing a radio play right here at the Boston Public Library, but you have all of these theaters across the city, outside of the city, coming together to present this.
Well, I'm very excited because I had an opportunity to interview Infanisa for a Wellesley-Huntington event, joint event not long ago, and boy, is she delightful. She's so exciting. She's so smart, obviously, Wellesley connection, as we've said. And I'm really thrilled that you get a chance, or I will have a chance, as will others, to see every single play in the cycle. So there's 9 plays all over, as Jared has said. If you know anything about cycle plays, most people think about August Wilson and his Century Cycle, which all the plays were set in Pittsburgh. I tried my best to make sure I saw all of them, but they never premiered at the same time. It was 1 year here, 2 years here, then they move around. So, I was fortunate enough to go to a few cities to catch some, but this is a whole other opportunity. You get to see the whole cycle, the whole unfolding, which takes place with a Nigerian-American family and a neighborhood.
Yeah, I jumped on this when I saw the word cycle because I did make that connection with the Century Cycle, and it turns out that she was inspired in part, by the existence of August Wilson's series of plays. And I just think thematically, it allows for a longer development of, these ideas because, she's trying to portray this immigrant Nigerian experience over, I think it's 3 generations. Big family. There's so many different ways to approach life in America, let alone, in Massachusetts, right? And, I do like the idea that you're able to just kind of like walk in, to each particular, piece, I guess, of this wider tapestry and just kind of see different expressions, theatrically of that.
And we should say that you don't have to see all of them in order. You can they all stand alone. So if you want to see all of them in order, great. But if you don't want to, you're okay too.
And these have been done elsewhere, but I think it'll be especially meaningful for us because hers is very much a Boston story. Her family coming from Nigeria to Texas and then ultimately to Boston. So we'll have that influence. And I think we have to give a lot of credit to Loretta Greco, who is the relatively new artistic director of the Huntington Theater Company, who had worked with the playwright before out at the Magic Theater in San Francisco and saw opportunity to do this cycle here. Not only saw the opportunity, but worked like heck, I think, to bring in all of these other institutions. So, as I often say, this has never been an area or town that has played well in the sand, where the different disparate groups play well in the sandbox together. But we're not finding that here when you have Central Square Theater, Front Porch Arts Collective, the Boston Arts Academy, Arts Emerson, as I mentioned, GBH, the Boston Public Library, the Boston Lyric Opera, Wheelock Family Theater. That's a huge swath of the theater and performance sector right there, all coming together for this.
And 2 years, so it's wonderful. It's really it's exciting.
It is exciting. Well, next, could Sean Penn play the openly gay Harvey Milk today? Sean Penn's answer is no. In a recent interview with the New York Times, he said that's because of the current culture in Hollywood, which he characterized as, quote, a time of tremendous overreach. It's a timid and artless policy toward the human imagination. This sprang out of an interview that he did with Maureen Dowd, and she was being provocative, although I don't think all that provocative, because this is a debate that rages. When you have a gay character, should a gay man, for instance, be playing that gay man on screen or on the theater? And this debate has gone back and forth for a number of years now. I first saw it surface with Call Me By Your Name, but his answer is no.
Well, I think a lot of people would disagree with him. Early on, I think when the discussion was happening, people said, well, there's not enough of them, or we can't find, all that, as often happens with other groups. I think it's important. It brings another level to the play. But I think what also is true is that gay characters can play straight characters, and my evidence of that, there are many, but I think about Jonathan Bailey on Bridgerton. And Jonathan Bailey is playing Anthony Bridgerton, and anyone will tell you it's hot. He's hot. No one's thinking, is he gay? I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, they're probably going to be saying the same thing when he starts in Wicked in a few months, too.
That is correct, yeah.
There's a level of nuance to the conversation that I also think needs to be had. I'm thinking about what we expect from our answers or from our actors, and I think that we're beyond this place where they're just a vehicle for what has been put onto a script or a screenplay or a teleplay or whatever. We expect, I think, actors to bring some of their own experience and imbue that into the performance. And so it's not unreasonable, I think, to have that expectation of like an actor to be able to relate to the character in a deep, intimate, and personal way, especially, and this is like where this kind of keys in for me, if that's fundamental to the character and the story.
Yeah.
You know, if it is a story, you know, about a gay person or a black person or, you know, a neurodivergent person, like whatever have you, you know, and that is key to kind of propelling the conversation, the themes, the plot, the experience, what the creator is trying to get across. I don't think it's unreasonable to want the representative of that to be able to connect in a way. There is, you know, maybe that certain X factor that we really can't put a name to or really identify, but I think we can feel that, you know, through the screen.
And I would assume at the time that Sean Penn was selected, there was also some screen power bottom line thing. He was a known factor. And rather than people saying, we can do this with someone who has the insight that James has just mentioned, we want to make sure people go to the theater and, ooh, it's going to be hard anyway because this is a movie driven by a main character who is gay.
Well, I think a number of other issues. One of the other complaints is if you're a straight actor taking queer roles, then you're taking roles away from the queer community to play. Because we have seen an evolution, and even back when Sean Penn was playing Harvey Milk to Oscar win, by the way, there weren't as many out actors. We still find people who feel the need to remain closeted in Hollywood because there still is not the widespread acceptance or can still be construed as a liability to their career. I think Jonathan Bailey belies that by stepping out and being forward and being one of the few people who can take on straight roles and have few people question it. But I remember when Sean Hayes from Will and Grace was on Broadway in Promises, Promises playing a straight man, and there was criticism against him. How could you possibly believe that Sean Hayes could play a straight man? That was very wounding to him. That was very wounding to the queer community at the time. I think a lot of that has abated, but a lot of that definitely still exists, and I find it to be a very worthy conversation, and I actually commend Sean Penn for, maybe his language was very harsh, but I think it's appropriate for him to address it and call out some of what still exists.
I do think that if you're going to take that route with casting, though, then maybe responsibility is a bit too strong of a word, but perhaps it's the right word. You know, for the creators, the casting directors, the directors themselves to actually have an open conversation to explain why they've gone that way. And reading about this Sean Penn story, I was reminded of this interview that Kimberly Pierce did, maybe even last week, down over at NPR, about whether she would cast a trans man if she were making, you know, Boys Don't Cry Today. I don't want to get into it here just for time and, you know, just for topic, but she gave a very detailed answer that addressed that criticism and just kind of like spelled out why she did what she did then, how she would approach it now, and that kind of gives a better appreciation, you know, for both what casting is and for the film itself, I think.
And the last thing I'll just say about this is biography comes to the fore now in a way. We've always been interested in stars. We know this going back to the Marilyn Monroe days and the Clark Gable days. Since the beginning of stardom, the concept of stardom, it was driven by knowing who your stars were, whether that truth was manufactured by the studios or whether it was actually true. And that really comes to the fore right now because we know so much about our actors' lives, even despite their attempts to keep it quiet. Like Andrew Scott, for instance, tries to keep his life quiet because he wants to be an actor first and foremost. The more you know about him as a person, he feels the less you can appreciate what he's trying to give you on screen. But because we know so much, that also makes it more challenging when you want to suspend disbelief and find these characters on the stage. Well, coming up, the magical Monolith Mystery Tour. Where are gleaming metal pillars popping up all over? That's next on The Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
We listen to what matters to you. I'm reporter Craig Lamolt.
I'm reporter Marilyn Sherrod.
Do you have a tip?
Want to offer feedback?
Invite us to an event?
Or want to participate in a listening session?
Feel free to reach out to us.
Email gbhnewsconnect@wgbh.org.
GBH News Connect at wgbh.org.
We'd love to hear from you.
making you part of our newsroom. GBH News Connect at WGBH.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Emerson Colonial Theater, presenting Kristen Chenoweth in the world premiere musical The Queen of Versailles, with music and lyrics by Stephen Schwartz, playing this summer, July 16th through August 25th. Tickets at emersoncolonialtheater.com. And Subaru of New England. This summer, you can hit the road and the trails in the all-wheel drive 2024 Subaru Outback. You can find your Subaru retailer at subaruofnewengland.com.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, we'll have local reaction to last night's debate and what voters are thinking about President Biden's future. And we'll hear what today's Supreme Court rulings on January 6 defendants and homeless encampments mean for Massachusetts. Plus, migrants who have been sleeping at Logan Airport will soon be pushed out. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
This is The Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen, joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and James Bennett II. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes a museum in the Netherlands that's created what it describes as an art connection for people with dementia and their caregivers. And this springs out of an Alzheimer's-related program at the Museum of Modern Art. But I think maybe this even ties back to what we were talking about in our very first segment with the American Repertory Theater, rethinking what it means to be a theater space. Museums are definitely rethinking their role as museums. James, as you were saying, this is not just a place where you come and visit. You are our guest here. You have a home here, and we will help you. And they're doing this in the Netherlands by finding ways for people with dementia and very specifically Alzheimer's. I know a lot about this. Callie, I know you sadly also know a lot about this. By making space for people with Alzheimer's and their caregivers as that memory fades away, as their ability to communicate fades away, to find a common ground of communication and emotionally resonant responses through art.
This is so important. My mother has passed, but while she was in, I would say, 4th stage Alzheimer's, what we discovered was that music had a great connection. If you played some music, it would bring back some memories, sometimes spark memories for her, and we could have a conversation. But what I know about the importance of sensory overload and sensory control is so important in general, because people with dementia can get overstimulated. And so what they've done here in this museum is that they have 6 specially trained museum guides. So they're aware of this, and they are able to bring the families and the people suffering dementia along through the exhibits in such a way that it can make a connection to them, the color, the fiber of it, if it's fabric, whatever the art piece is, mixed media or not. But it leads to a conversation and a connection, even if it's fleeting. And that, if you are a family member and your loved one has Alzheimer's, you are grabbing onto those fleeting moments so much. So I just love this idea.
Yeah. In an article that we shared beforehand, though, one of the museum spokespeople had said that it's key to remember that dementia doesn't necessarily affect emotion. And so being able to...
in fact, that's the last thing to go.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And so it's this idea to be able to kind of tap into that and be able to have that conversation connection. But I'm actually really interested in this project because it seems that the Netherlands are doing a lot of interesting work with rethinking, caretaking for dementia and Alzheimer's patients. Do you know about I'm going to get this pronunciation really wrong, but the Hoekeve? Are you familiar with this? Okay, so it opened in 2009. It's a model village in the town of...
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yes, and there's the town
also in the Netherlands, right?
Yeah. Town square, cafe, a pub, and a theater that they're open to the public. That actually stimulates the economy. And the residents, they live in these houses that reflect, their lives. If they came from like a very posh background, then they have that reflected there, and so on. And the research that was kind of poured into that kind of hinges on this idea that the more that they're stimulated, able to, walk around, engage with the surroundings with other people, they notice that they're a lot calmer and they require less medication, these patients do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the emotional piece of it is so important because they feed off your emotions. So if you're in an emotional space where you're all anxious and frazzled, that'll transfer to them. But if you're also in a calming space, as you've just described, James, it's a whole other thing.
And that's why I think this is so key for the caregivers, because when you're with your loved one who has Alzheimer's, or dementia, if you're at home, it is so difficult. It's a 24/7 job. It is really, 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 really hard. But if you go to a museum and you have this moment where you're both on level playing ground, you're both just enjoying art, you have those moments to take away because it has just put you both on the same playing field. And then you have these, for the caregiver, you have the lasting memories.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, we move to Toronto now, which brings new meaning to underground art, turning the vacant space under its expressway into a space for public art. We love to talk about public art. We love that it's free and accessible. Kelly, I know you love this story in particular.
Well, it's a 35-year-old First Nation artist from Ontario. His name is Nico Williams. He's known for traditional beadwork renderings, found objects. He uses bingo cards, lawn chairs, all of that. But what I think is so interesting, some of his beading is so fine that people think it's fabric. And it's hanging in all kinds of places under the expressways. And there is something that the repair people do to the concrete that causes various dings and cracks in it. So he's positioned a lot of his pieces over that.
After they covered it up, we should point out.
Yes.
We're not forgetting there was a hole.
That's right. And so it's just, a beautiful piece on something that was potentially kind of ugly looking, in addition to everything else.
Yeah, I like, how you were able to mention that it is kind of fixing the patch, or it's covering that up. I mean, it's beautifying the infrastructure that we rely on, or I guess people in Toronto rely on. I've never been on that particular expressway, so I can't vouch for its functionality. But I was thinking about this tweet that I thought was pretty funny, and I was like, AI needs to stop trying to figure out how to make art better. Like, leave that to us. Like, figure out how to do my tax sheet and like chores and all that. Like, do that. And it kind of comes to that idea where it's this idea that I have of like over-investiture in, I guess in like, I want to say like practical concrete things, no pun intended. And it's like, do you want your infrastructure to look boring? Do you want your surroundings to be less vibrant? It just seems like a layup for me to make life even just more pleasant.
And I love it. I so often used to find myself seeing stories like this and think, why don't we have this here in Massachusetts? But we do. I think we've beat Toronto, because underneath the expressway in the South End, that's been basically turned into a museum, inviting artists to come in and make murals underneath that expressway. If you go underneath the Zakim Bridge by the skateboard park, there is fabulous graffiti. That's what we used to be called graffiti. It's now the street art that's happening there, and it's ever changing because you have this youth culture who's making it their own every single day of the year. And I actually just asked Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll about this yesterday. She was on the show talking about the live theater tax credit, but also the administration's investment in arts and culture. And I remembered that something the governor had told me about having an interest in embedding artists in state agency for exactly this reason. So here in Massachusetts, as I say, we're already doing this work, and here's what the Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll had to say about how we're bringing art into infrastructure.
The MBTA doesn't just have to be a train or a bus. How do we think about using those public spaces, from the bus stops and the infrastructure that we all participate in, but not having them be so pedestrian? And the idea is not just to have paint on walls, but embedding how we think about solving some of our biggest challenges. Artists think differently, and creatives can help us really address some of those challenges.
And Mary Grant, the president of Mass Art, who joins us regularly as a Culture Show contributor, points out that not all of the students who are going to her school intend to be artists coming out of Mass Art.
That's right.
But they know they can take that skill set, and it is so valuable in various sectors. So hopefully we're still just at the beginning, and we'll see more of that here in Massachusetts.
I'll just point out that he also refers to this whole project, the artist himself, as cultural repair. So which I
Fabulous.
love.
We need more of it.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to stay back here in the U.S. now for whether it's a public art project or a prank. It's truly monolithic. And this is fascinating to have these shimmering metal objects just sprouting out of the land at various places here in the United States, from Utah to California, New Mexico. Actually, those are all kind of desert areas, remote areas. It even popped up on Fremont Street, that very legendary street in Las Vegas. But Callie, what do you think? I know you love this one too. What do you think is going on? Is it aliens?
Well, I missed the first iteration. I guess a lot of them sprung up during the COVID-19 pandemic. It must be. How do you get this glass? These things are tall,
it must
glass,
be aliens.
monolith thing. I mean, who's sneaking out to put that together in these deserted areas? I just can't figure out what it's about.
Apparently, they're actually not that heavy. There is a group.
It just looks like it.
Yeah, it just looks like it. There's a group of, I guess, pro-Trump protesters back in the fall of 2020 that went to one of these monoliths and toppled it, and their whole thing was, no illegal aliens from, outside of the United States or outside of the planet Earth. But I do want to just draw attention to the environmental implications of, of these public art pieces. Like you had mentioned, these are springing up mainly in the desert. And I actually just got off the phone before we started with a naturalist friend of mine and a birder. And they explained to me that deserts, when you disrupt a desert ecosystem, it takes a lot longer to kind of correct itself than other types of environments. And of course, these 12 feet tall metal structures are reflective, which poses a threat, to birds that may fly into it. And even if they don't fly into, the structure itself, it is a disruption to what they know, and so they'll start to avoid that area entirely. And so to contrast that actually with what we just learned about up in Toronto, it does bring this conversation to a point of like how to do public art responsibly. It's like, oh, all art is good. And it's like, well, there's a way that you can do this where it is actually, potentially harmful.
How do they anchor it? See your
it's
point.
Concrete and rebar.
Yeah, but
I did a little research on this.
Yeah, but who doesn't see them doing this? That's what I don't understand. You just don't do concrete and rebar in 30 minutes.
What's the last time you hung out in the desert? Just observing.
Okay, fair point.
There aren't a lot of cameras there. Well, I think that's why it's happening in all these areas. But, by the way, I think we do know the one that sprouted up in Fort Collins, Colorado. It was a neighbor. It was a nefarious neighbor who knew that his neighbor friend kind of was wondering about aliens, and so he decided to suggest that aliens had landed in his yard, because the first things that aliens want to do is leave a monolith behind, apparently. So that's how it all started. At least that's what we're led to believe. All right, well, coming up, bringing down the house, we have an update on the fate of Marilyn Monroe's Los Angeles home, which has been facing demolition. That and more coming up next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
One of the biggest stressors when applying to college is that daunting personal essay. How long should it be? Is the grammar correct? And what on earth should you write about?
It's telling them that I'm a person who is passionate about investing in the future.
I said in the essay that I was a teen mom, and I thought it was very empowering because there's a lot of my classmates that go through the same thing.
Find out how 2 students successfully wrote their essays on our podcast, College Uncovered. Get it wherever you listen.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Newport Mansions, presenting an evening with actor Danae Benton and executive producer Erica Dunbar July 9th at Rosecliff. They'll discuss Peggy Scott, Benton's character on HBO's The Gilded Age. Tickets at newportmansions.org.
GBH 89.7 listeners prefer to purchase from companies that sponsor GBH. Become a corporate sponsor today. Packages can include audio, video, digital, and events. Learn more at gbh.org/sponsorship.
Paris first hosted the Olympics more than a century ago, the year 1900.
Some of the people didn't know they were competing in the Olympics.
Now in 2024, it's a whole new ballgame.
For 2 weeks or 3 weeks this summer, Paris is going to be the center of the world.
The Paris Olympics, then and now, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to The Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by Culture Show co-hosts Callie Crossley and James Bennett II. It's Friday, and on The Culture Show, that can only mean one thing.
It's time for Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday.
So we have some updates on stories that we have a lot of. This is a big week for updates. So we have some updates on stories that we have been talking about here, including Tasmania's Museum of Old and New Art. So if you've been listening to The Culture Show, we talked about this once, if not twice. And this is about an exhibition in Tasmania, and it's very, very conceptual because you had a curator who wanted to create a space for only women, and this was to address Australia's lengthy history that persists today of having male-only spaces. So she created a space in the Museum of Old and New Art that was essentially a ladies' lounge, and it's very well decorated, and it's filled with wonderful things you want to see, like jewels and Picasso painting. Well, of course, what happened? A man sued and said, this is discrimination because I can't enter. She said, well, that's the whole point. It went to the courts. The court said, no, he's right. And so she had, by the way, on the way to court, she brought a bunch of women who were dressed in navy suits and pearls, also a reference, I think, to Robert Palmer. So she kept the conceptual art notion going. But in the face of that court ruling that said, no, it had to be open to everyone, she moved it to the ladies' room. She moved it to the bathroom, so the men can't go in there either.
I love this so much, I can't even tell you. I just love this.
By the way, this is not also the great museum where we talked about because they were playing the Wu-Tang Clan album that can only be heard in person. Most of us won't hear it because we can only finally download it in about 80 years, but they're doing really clever things there. Callie, you have a big Follow-Up Friday moment for us.
I do. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, we know them as the Oscar people, have invited for their 2024 class 487 invitations. Now, you know, they've been criticized. That's been our conversation over time about the makeup of the people who vote on the Oscars. They do other things, but that's their primary thing, being very, very, very overwhelmingly white and older, quite older. So they're trying to young it up and be more expansive in the constituencies that are represented in the voters. So they've invited all kinds of fabulous people, like Cord Jefferson. You may know his name. He wrote, directed the American Fiction, which got a lot of attention. Some Oscar winners from last year, like Davine Randolph, and almost Oscar winners, but Oscar nominated, Lily Gladstone, Color Purples, Danielle Brooks. These are just a few. The filmmaker Celine Song, who also wrote the script for that. In the case of Cord and Celine, they'll have to decide which branch they want to join because they did all the roles. So this is exciting. If everybody said yes, the 487 that were invited, that won't happen. They would have 9,934 voting members, and the makeup would be 35% women, 20% from underrepresented ethnic and racial communities, and 20% international. Now imagine what that would reflect, how that would be reflected on the material that comes to them now. I just think we'd see a lot of different kinds of perspectives, and I think the votes would be different. I don't think that group would have voted for the Green Book. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Well, I have to say one thing I didn't realize viewership has been growing. It's not what it was, but viewership for the Oscars has been growing over the last 3 years. There's been a lot of justifiable criticism for the fact that their ranks aren't still diverse, but it has been growing. Obviously, if it's more diverse, it's going to bring in more audiences, so we see it trending in the right direction. Yeah. So another Follow-Up Friday moment we have is we talked about Marilyn Monroe's home in Los Angeles. This is the last home she owned. I think the first home she bought outright by herself. She bought it about 6 months before she died, and she only lived there for a short time, of course, before her body was discovered due to a presumed overdose there. Well, flash forward, and a couple bought the home they bought that home because they lived next door, ultimately with the intention of spending $8.5 million so they could tear her home down so they could expand their home in the Brentwood section of Los Angeles. People began to lose their minds because it's Marilyn Monroe's home, and even though it's behind a gated community and you can't really see the home, they said it's worth preserving because it's so tied to her, and so there was this huge effort to try to stop the demolition. Well, we found out this week they prevailed. The Los Angeles City Council got together and designated her home an historic place, and it will be saved. And now there is this conversation, which actually had risen when the owners wanted to demolish it, but fine, just move it, move it somewhere else, because they were arguing it doesn't really represent her because so much has changed, but it will be preserved, and it may move ultimately. But this is, what I think is really interesting too, is that if you look at the historic designations in Los Angeles, only 3% are tied to women.
That's interesting. And this was a unanimous vote, by the way, which I think is very interesting.
It was, and so the other interesting thing I found is that she spent a lot of time investing in that home. She went to Mexico a lot, and she tapped artists to create her furniture, and she brought a lot of ceramics back, and this was really a home she made for herself. So there may be an opportunity for a new museum here.
Maybe.
Rouse at the Hacienda style.
Now, James, I know you have a couple big updates for us, too.
Oh, my God. That should give you a nod to what these updates are. They concern, first up, Jonathan Majors, who has been cast as the star in a new movie directed by Martin Villeneuve called Merciless, which I just want to say is an extremely ironic film title for someone to star in who is coming off of a domestic battery conviction. But, you know, it is this weird kind of easy path to what is this perceived redemption. Earlier this week, he actually was at the Impact Awards I believe it's in Beverly Hills, where he won the Perseverance Award presented by Iyanla Van Zant. Am I saying her name? I always say her name wrong.
Iyanla Van Zant,
yes.
Yeah,
she presented this. It was the most bizarre thing that I've seen in a minute, and it's just really weird calling this a comeback or redemption arc, because at least in my opinion, it didn't feel like he went anywhere. You know, this court thing played out last summer, you know, and just a year later, he gets the award, he gets this film, which I guess is a regular timeline for an actor to find work, and it's not Disney money, but it's still Hollywood money. So on the other side of that, we have Will Smith.
Well, let's go back to Jonathan Majors for just a second, because I think this is hard for a lot of people to understand, because we're still in this moment of cancel culture, however you believe that, and whether you believe there's substance for whatever somebody's doing, for something they misspoke, or in a conviction like this. And I know that I, for one, was surprised by the fact that this conviction happened. Right away, he gets to go on television and talk about it and begin his redemption tour, which clearly worked. I know it takes a while to put film deals in the works, so maybe it was already in the works. So it seems like Hollywood is thinking his major consequence already came in that he lost the Marvel movies and the big Hollywood money that you were talking about. But now in just a short time, again, even though you have this assault conviction, look at the outrage with Harvey Weinstein, he gets to go back and make a movie. How do we think that this is able to happen?
I am just gobsmacked, I have to say. I just thought it would take him a long time. He not only lost Marvel, he lost every film he was supposed to. CAA dropped him, that's his agent. And in addition to that, he's made some questionable comments about Megan Good, his girlfriend, being like Coretta Scott King. Oh, yeah. Which inspired the King family to say, keep my mom's name out your mouth. So, I mean, how in the hell is he? I don't get it.
Greed. Yeah, well, actually, you're right. I would say it's greed. I would say it's the money. But we all saw what happened, how it's played out. We all know what the cultural temperature of the situation is. And so it's like, can you even make the case? Can a studio make the case that Jonathan Majors is as bankable as he was, maybe in 2021? Like, yeah.
Well, going back to the biography that we were talking about with gay actors playing gay roles, can you go to a theater and suspend your notion of what you know that Jonathan Majors is capable of? Could you ever see him in a rom-com, for example? And maybe he's bold enough to take on that role after getting the Perseverance Award.
Yeah.
Maybe because it takes so long to do the movie, by the time it comes out, he'll be in a different space. I don't know.
It's just how it's been postured to me. Just like I watched some, not all, maybe 3 minutes of this 17-minute speech that he gave, and the whole time you're just like thinking, like, what are we celebrating right now? Like, my brain is working overtime trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And he's not the only. We have somebody else who's further along on the redemption.
Yeah.
I would say it's a redemption arc in a very different way, Will Smith's. We talked about this briefly last week with respect to the new Bad Boys film getting really great reviews and doing really good at the box office. And with Will Smith, he's going to be performing on Sunday evening at the BET Awards, and he is going to be performing music, including a new song that dropped just a couple hours ago, actually.
Which means we can take a listen to You Can Make It right now.
I mean, Will Smith is a very capable rapper, and I think that people tend to forget that, but I was just like, come on, bro. Like, and you think about, like, how hard has your life been, really? I mean, he's posting on Instagram, and he's sitting at the piano, banging out the chords, that have become this song, which I just want to nod and say really reminds me of the American Symphony by John Batiste. I don't know if you...
Yes.
I was in that documentary, actually. I'm in the audience of the camera. But it does very much evoke that. I don't know. I don't know what that has to do with really anything about Will Smith, but I just thought it was a very interesting thing to bring up. But, it is a perseverance track. God opens the window. When the devil closes the door, he raps. And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, there is no way that he's talking about himself. And then he hits us with, believe me, they tried to bleed Will Smith. In the rear view, we see adversity as the gift. And it's like, I think you're doing fine. And again, unlike Jonathan Majors, there was to be fair with Jonathan Majors, a lot of people were excusing kind of the violence, but with Will Smith, I feel there were a lot of people that were like, this slap is not that big of a deal. Like, yeah, the Academy banned him from attending the Academy Awards for 10 years, but it's not like they banned him from work for 10 years. He's still around and still very, very popular, and more so than Majors, extremely bankable still.
Well, it's true, except he, also represented by CAA, did not say anything to them until recently when Bad Boys came out, and it looked like it was going to make the money that it has made. So now his redemption can be bottom line, which may give him a different kind of boost, you know what I mean, in terms for people who are a little on the fence about,
Yeah, so I know that Callie would prefer we remember this Will Smith.
Yes.
Which got us through many summers.
This is my song. Summertime. That is a classic, and it's corny, and I don't care.
Oh, I don't think it's corny at all. I love it. I think it's great. I just quickly want to just plug Jazzy Jeff and Mick Boogie have a series of mixtapes called the Summertime Mixtape, and on the very first volume, this was the opening track. And I listen to it every year, and that's when I know my summer has begun.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Okay.
Well, that next song is not brought to us by Will Smith. That's our lightning, which means it's time for our lightning round. These are the stories that caught our attention this week, the headlines that caught our attention. Callie, what's yours?
Well, it's almost July, which means it's almost Christmas in July for the Hallmark Channel. And they've just come out announcing that they're doing a special movie called Holiday Touchdown, A Chiefs Love Story. That's in reference to the Kansas City Chiefs, the championship football team. Look at James's face. It's a partnership. They've done partnerships with the Chiefs before. They're going to have special promotions. The film is a very small little plot, which I enjoy. We don't need to stress ourselves. It's about somebody trying to improve.
Like that's unusual, small little plot?
Do not denigrate Hallmark. Continuing, as I said, they're going to have special events, and some of the stars of the football team will, show up with some other people. The plot is that a young woman is trying to increase the fan program for the Chiefs, and then she falls in love with the guy who's in the front office who doesn't like her. But we don't need more than that. We just need a little harmony. We can look forward to look at James's face.
I won't brook this.
There's no romance, James. I see that now. Anyway,
how did we just go 180 seconds without hearing Taylor Swift's name in all of that?
I think this is actually a clever move. You put the Chiefs in there, but you don't focus on Travis and Taylor Swift, because if they break up, then you don't have a movie. So I think they did correctly. They did it right.
Yeah, the clock is running on that one. All right, James, what's the headline that caught your attention?
Listen, let's just hope that the Baltimore Ravens don't make an appearance in that film. Unless they're the antagonists and they win, in which case I'll be very happy. But for me, Do the Right Thing, the Spike Lee joint, it turns 35 this year. And so, for that 35th anniversary, Brother Spike has partnered with Jordan Brand for some reason, not sure, but not complaining, to present a block party in Brooklyn on Sunday afternoon, early evening, on a street that has been renamed Do the Right Thing Way, even though no one really calls it that. It's class in between Quincy and Lexington. And I'm really interested to see how this shapes up. It's not a ginormous block. It is a bit of a major thoroughfare. I have been noticing a trend, at least in New York, of these organic block parties, especially in Brooklyn, cropping up. And so I don't know if it's going to be a situation with like different vendors. Will there be a screening of the movie? Will Spike himself show up? Not sure. Will Michael Jordan show up? He was born in Brooklyn. Don't forget. And I actually will be headed down there and kind of doing a little bit of reporting for it. So I know there's anticipation of what are you getting into this next week, and that's actually what it is for me. So.
But didn't he do the Jordan commercial? It's the shoes.
He did.
So
it's got to be the shoes.
Yeah. So that's the connection. Yeah.
And Springfield's own Ruth E. Carter did the costume.
That is correct.
Yes.
That is correct.
Very much.
Yeah.
So
Her big break by Spike.
Exactly. My pick this week is one of the most extraordinary television shows I have ever seen is back after a very long absence. This is a show called Babylon Berlin, and it's German. It's based on a series of books. Friends of mine who are actors turned me onto this a number of years ago. It is truly one of the best shows that I've ever seen because it's set in the I think when we start the late 19 teens and then goes through the 20s. So this is the Weimar Republic decadence, but also we see fascism and the far right creeping in. We see Nazism creeping in, and it's all built around this detective who's dealing with PTSD from World War I, joining the homicide investigation unit in the Berlin Police Department. We had 3 seasons. They were all on Netflix, and then that was it. And I knew another season had been made. By the way, I think this was the most expensive German production ever, and it shows because the sets are beautiful, the costumes are beautiful, the musical numbers, because a lot of this takes place in a big Berlin club, they're really, really exceptional. And I kept checking and it wasn't showing up. Well, it's back, but it's on this weird thing called MHZ Choice, which is some sort of streaming platform. I don't know why Netflix lost it, but it's coming back, and I think they're going to have all of the seasons. And I have learned that you can sign up and get your free trial, so you'll be able to binge it as I will. But again, the show is called Babylon Berlin. It came highly recommended, and I've been literally waiting years for this latest season.
Wow. They probably got stopped by the actor strike, maybe. Did they have any?
I think
even though that's a German thing, all this stuff was impacted.
There was some negotiating that happened. Well, that is all for The Culture Show. Remember, you can always download The Culture Show podcast to keep on top of all things arts and culture. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. Kelly, we have time for only just a quick tease for Under the Radar.
LGBTQ Roundtable and online Roxbury Film Fest.
Very nice. And tune into The Culture Show on Monday for 3 takes on the 4th of July. Frederick Douglass's Meditations on Independence Day, an exhibition on the original printings of the Declaration of Independence, actually right upstairs from where we are right now at the Boston Public Library. They'll be on view. And a preview of Harbor Fest. Thank you today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Glenn Heath, Sai Patel, Josh Polonsky, Maddie Geyer, Matthew Glover, Eddie Hickey, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Carly Kokorin, and thanks to City Table, the Lenox Hotel, and the Newsfeed Cafe. I'm Jared Bowen. Have an art and culture-filled weekend.
Huzzah.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library!
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
HD1 Lowell, Boston, WGBH FM HD2 Boston, WCAI FM HD2 Woods Hole, WJMF FM HD1 Smithfield, Providence, and at classical.org.
Coming up on 3 o'clock and 77 degrees here in Boston. And if you're looking for something to do this weekend, I've got an idea for you. I'll tell you all about it in less than 15 minutes, right after Emmy Ferguson and Ruckus play Bach's Sonata in E minor.